This is the Gomaluku podcast.
Really, I'm thinking of retiring for good.
Why don't you? Like it's you made your miles, to sort of say.
Well,
Not that I want you gone, but it is.
I'm sure. I mean, there are some that probably would be happy if I left, but not you. But obviously, but some.
No.
No, But what would I do?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could watch Netflix for all day and catch it. We started this really bad. I mean, it's really like it's very good, but it's very graphic and very violent thing on Netflix called Babylon, Berlin Babylon.
Berlin Babylon?
It's a series, like 9 years worth of this torturing naked people. I mean, it's really very, very graphic. But that would keep me busy. I mean, 9 years worth of 16 episodes a year. Breaking Bad is like 9 years.
Yeah.
Really watch a lot of TV that way.
What kind of series do you watch? Like, what kind of TV shows do you like?
I like action, violent shit. I mean, excuse me.
No, by all means.
But it's yeah, I'm afraid I do. I like Sicario and things like that. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I saw it. It's a good movie though. Like, yeah.
It is a good movie. It is a good movie. There's some very good movies like that. But my partner, she likes romantic stuff. So you have to like, she likes romantic comedies. She really stuff like that. But you have to kind of like, you can't get your way all the time, so you just
Right. How does that conversation or maybe negotiation go? Like, all right, Netflix evening, let's pick out a movie. You want Sicario and she wants The Notebook.
Kind of sensitive to each other and choose. We take turns, more or less. But I have control. I've always got the remote in my hand. See, so I'm the ultimate control. I think when I die, I think they're gonna bury me with the remote in it.
What's that? You know that movie? That movie called with that remote that can, with Adam Sandler in it. Like you can go back and forth into time.
No, that sounds like a movie she'd like.
It's not a movie that you would like. It is a comedy, not a romantic one. Even though Kate Beckinsale is in it, but it is. Yeah, it is a comedy with a meaning behind it. That like it's because he goes to Bed Bath and Beyond because he's an architect and he wants to make use of his time, and so there was something wrong with the TV, so he went to Bed Bath and Beyond to get a remote. But he did get a from Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken is in that movie. So any movie with Christopher Walken is funny.
Yeah, really, it's gonna be weird too. It's gonna be
weird as well. Yeah, like like Christopher Walken, like not only his the way he speaks, but like the way he looks, and he offers him a remote that can fast forward in time. So that he not fast. Yeah, we can fast forward in time, but also that he can pause time around him so that he can work, and then whilst everyone is in pause, and then he can play again, and then the world continues. But he has done a lot of work in the meantime. But it has a meaning behind it. At least that's how I look at it. Is that you need to appreciate time as it is. Even though
but that sounds like a good bank robbery kind of plot.
True, yeah, and it's and like, do you like Adam Sandler movies? I know that the people, you love him or you hate him though.
I watch, I watch Saturday Night Live for a while. I
Right.
do once in a while. I never, I don't know. I don't know if I ever liked them particularly. Saturday Night Live tends to go, in stages. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. Now
Right.
it looks good.
Yeah.
But the guy I like is that guy from Long Island, the guy that made the movie King of Long Island. He's a kind of a weird dude. He's got tattoos all over him.
All right. Let me Google that. King of Long Island. What's his
I
name?
think that's the name. But him I like because he's really upfront. He tried to commit suicide.
Really?
He actually did. And then he made he incorporated it into his routine. So he makes fun of himself wanting to commit suicide. He's really
I got the King of Staten Island. I don't
King
know.
of Staten Island. That's it.
Oh,
That's
that
it.
one. Wait.
Yeah. Check it out. It's good. It's funny. It's good. I liked it.
Oh, it's a movie, right?
Yes,
That's what it is. Oh, that guy. Yeah. Train wreck, knocked up, 40-year-old Pete. Oh, Pete Davidson. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the guy from Saturday Night Live. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. I enjoy him actually. I enjoy his humor because he makes fun of the real dark stuff,
Mm-hmm. Do you watch like comedy, stand-up comedy? Is that something that you do?
Well, no, I mean Chris Rock,
Right.
I like stand-up comedy. What was I saw one recently, some Chinese guy. He was pretty funny.
Chinese guy. Well, it looks Chinese, but wearing a suit, or really a Chinese guy. There's this Chinese guy that looks Chinese, but he's wearing a suit. He was from either Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, him. He's a good stand-up comic. The guy from Saturday Night Live. And there's also an East Asian that I think is funny. And then there's this white guy that comes out on Saturday Night Live. He's really funny. I really I like his humor a lot. But I'm not in for names, you're flipping channels and you come across these people,
Right. Yeah.
I gave up cable completely. I'm on a Fire Stick now.
Oh,
and
okay.
The only thing I really miss, I didn't know that that NBC had them here in the United States has a monopoly on sports. So you can only get sports where NBC licenses it, and they only license it to cable channels.
Right.
So if you're not on cable, you can't get live sports. I can't watch the Warriors or the Giants live, except through this kind of like thing that maybe I shouldn't talk about violating people's copyrights. But,
well, everybody does it. So like live streams and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
So I found this channel that's really good. I can watch everything I want to watch, and I use a virtual private network, so they can't arrest me.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're not the only one that does it. I do it too, and it's because there's a lot of. I'm not doing it for the Netflix, because a lot of do this VPN thing because they want to watch Netflix, because there's different. They have different offerings. So Canada compared to US, compared to France and whatever, like they all have different programs on Netflix, and I'm not doing it for that. But I am doing it for sports, definitely, because I like to watch rugby, and like they don't show rugby in Europe. Only when they they do show rugby, but France versus Italy, and but like the Southern Hemisphere rugby is something that I really love to watch. So New Zealand, Australia, and
South Africa,
Argentina.
Really, Argentina? I didn't know Argentina had a rugby team.
They kick ass. Like they're very well organized right now. Like they invested a lot of money into the rugby into the rugby national rugby team, and now it is actually part of the rugby championship. Wow. It's like the Southern Hemisphere championship of rugby teams, national rugby teams. So obviously you have the big ones: New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, and and Argentina, and now they also want to include, or they also have already included, I can't remember. They also include Japan. Yeah.
Well, they get sumo wrestlers, so I guess they can get people up to.
Yeah.
You don't imagine the Japanese being like, like the Australian. They're mostly Maori. The Australians are all Maori.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maori. They're big.
The big guys, the big people.
So I
definitely.
can't. But I guess the Japanese can come up with a few big guys too.
Yeah, and it's the thing is right now is that you can see that people like the lifetime of a rugby player is like the lifetime of a football player, not like a soccer player, not an American football, but soccer player. So you have until you're, I don't know, like 35, 38, something like that. But like the lifetime of a rugby player in a super competition like the one in New Zealand or in Australia, it's even shorter than that. So like what they do is they to continue playing a game and to be able to get paid, they either go to Japan. So that competition is getting stronger right now, as well as, or they go to France, which is one of the strongest competitions in Europe. So yeah, but I use VPN to watch that, but not so much Netflix or
I didn't know you could do Netflix like that.
People do. There's people that so for example, there was a time, for example, I'm a huge West Wing fan, like the old 90s series with Martin Sheen, about the White House. You remember that one?
Oh yeah. He was the president.
Yeah, he was the president. Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of that. So obviously Netflix Europe, it didn't include that. So for a brief while, Netflix US did have it. So I tried VPN, but then it warns you, like, because it sees that you're using a proxy. So like, all right, you can do this, and we will ban you from Netflix, or you can just stop and just watch Netflix from Europe. So immediately I just stopped it, and it just does one 30-second episode in. So I had to find, like, actually I had to buy the DVD box, which is also fine. Okay, it's kind of a tangible thing that you can hold in your hands, like a big DVD box of 9 seasons of the West Wing. But yeah, you can do that with people are still doing it. Not me though. With a VPN, trying to watch Netflix or Hulu or all the other platforms that are out there to want to.
Well, actually, if you have a Fire Stick, it's worthwhile. I was thinking about doing this, like getting HBO Plus for a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then watch binge on the programs that I want to watch. Like,
right.
What is that? The one about? Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them. HBO has a lot of really good shows and good serials.
Mm-hmm.
But I subscribe to Hulu, and my partner has subscribes to Amazon, and my daughter subscribes to Netflix, so we're covered.
Right. Yeah. That's the good. There's so many out there. So
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's gonna get more and more. Even if are you a motorsports fan? Do you watch that Formula One kind of thing? No. So they're going to do that behind a paywall as well, Formula One, but only if you're interested in it. But yeah, like with me and my siblings, so my little sister, she has Netflix. My sister has a Dutch domestic, like a Blockbuster kind of thing, which went online. I have Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. So Amazon, and we share the codes and everything, so that we can watch yeah,
just
like
about anything. Yeah.
just about anything, and still you're like, yeah, what do you want to watch? I don't know. And you still don't know what to watch. Like all
But
these, all, yeah,
what I've been doing is like when I have I just shut down on work and it's still like 5 or 6 in the afternoon and nothing's on. Uh, I'll just scroll through all the movies
right,
and then pick out the ones that look interesting and put them on my list, and then go to the next one and see what looks good, but not really wanting to see anything, but just seeing what's out there.
right,
And
right.
there's been a good payoff to that. I mean, because it's interesting. You watch the trailers, and then you go on to the next one, and you can build up a bank. So when you really want to watch something, when you really want to relax, you already got movies picked out already. You don't have to go through that routine.
Right, right, yeah. Is there, yeah? Is there a like, so you mentioned Sicario, but there must be like a movie that's your top gangster kind of movie that is like yeah, like your go-to movie, right? Like if you want to relax or you want to like watch a movie of that genre.
Well, I don't know. The one the There's been a few. There's been a few that I really like like Liam Neeson and the Taken, the first one.
Yeah, first one. Yeah.
When he stole his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a skill set.
Yeah,
Talk about a skill set.
I have a
That
very
was
particular skill
really
set.
good. Yeah, that was a very good movie. I mean, a lot of mayhem, a lot of murder, a lot of killing.
Yeah.
And then, but I guess my all-time favorite movie that I've watched twice actually, which means that I really liked it, was Popeye Doyle, and I think the what was it called? The French Connection. It's like in the 50s or 60s movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good. And then there's another one that's a sleeper, but I thought it was an excellent movie, and I've been trying to find it. It's called The Conversation.
The Conversation?
Yes, check it out.
Right.
It's really interesting. It's about a guy who's been hired to spy on this couple.
Okay. The Conversation. With Gene Hackman?
Gene Hackman, right.
Harrison Ford.
Wow. It was good. It was an excellent movie. Because the ending is really like
a plot twist. Is that what it is?
The ending was interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Generally I like Gene Hackman movies. They're always just kind of like offbeat. Like he was Popeye Doyle in The French Connection.
Yeah.
And there was another one called Night Moves with Gene Hackman. And it's anyway, if I told you anything about the movie, it would be like revealing the ending.
Okay. So
I can't really talk about the movie except that it was really a good movie, but the ending was just so.
It was okay, like a 180 degrees kind of mind.
It was like 360 degrees.
Oh, okay.
It was terrible. It was really like, it's not something you would expect.
Okay.
That was but and the soundtrack of it had this suite of 12 cellos. Really? It was nothing but cellos. Yeah. And I've been looking for it too. I love the cello. But I never. Oh, it was basses. It was like the big ones.
Yeah.
It was a suite for 12 basses or something. I don't even know who wrote it, but I've been looking for it. I think I have the name wrong or whatever. But the soundtrack was good. I really like the soundtrack. But anyway, that's
should be on YouTube, I guess. It's like nowadays all these soundtracks and all the suites and everything else. If the suites of all these classics are online, then definitely that one should be online as well. It's with Gene Hackman, I liked him, but like the thing is, like I'm not so much of a gangster movie. Honest, I have to admit that I've never watched one episode, not one movie of The Godfather. Never watched it.
Actually, I would recommend it. I would recommend all three of them, actually, but the first
do?
and second are excellent. Really, they're terrific movies.
Never felt the need to do it though. I was
No,
like,
you don't
yeah.
have a need. There's no need to watch Frankenstein, but
Oh, true. Yeah.
but if you want to relax and check out a good movie, I think it's, I think they were very good. They were very good.
Okay.
And I don't know if what they say now that the mafia has turned legitimate. They still do their thing, but a lot of the old time gangsters that were able to do it converted all their cash into like Las Vegas casinos and restaurant chains and things and became legitimate,
Right.
as the Godfather did in his third movie. But no, they're good movies. I like them. I like them.
All right. Yeah. I've people talk about it and they refer to it as either one of the movies in the top 5 or top 10 movies. Like, oh yeah, Godfather. That's Goodfellas. I watched Goodfellas though. I like Goodfellas.
That was a good movie too.
But I've never watched the Godfather. And I would people give me stink for that though. They're like, what? You never watched Godfather? How the hell can you be a
Francis Ford
be
Coppola is
alive?
a good. Francis Ford Coppola is the best, man. There's no director better. There may be directors that are as good. Like the movie you like, Martin Sheen. He made, what was the movie about Vietnam? What was it called?
Yeah. Oh shoot.
But that was an excellent movie.
Forgot the name of it. No.
I know Martin Sheen from, just we went to I was on this delegation to Nicaragua. Well, we would go during the Contra Wars, and we were all lefties, going to Nicaragua. I was supporting the Sandinistas. The Sandinistas had granted autonomy to the northern region, to the Atlantic, to the Mosquito. So that was made up for it, but it was too late. I mean, the U.S. was already too much involved. They were already just feeding this army and so they just started. They were still in civil war. So I went down there with Martin Sheen, Daniel Ellsberg, and Blaise Von Pain. I don't know if you know Blaise Von Pain is, but he was a lefty priest. So there's this really high level thing. And so I talked a lot. We had conversations, and he said that that Vietnam movie was Francis's movie.
Right. Okay.
That was that. He said that movie was Francis. He said that was not my movie. It was Francis's movie. And so I asked him, "What is your movie? What you consider your movie?" And he talked about this movie about this couple, this young man and woman who went on a murder spree in the Midwest, and I forget the name of that movie too, but that was he considered that personally his movie.
Okay.
So
I looked it up. It's Apocalypse Now.
That's it.
That one.
That's
yeah.
it. That was excellent movie.
Yeah.
And I thought he was very good in it too, but he said, well, maybe, but that was Francis's movie. I thought it was his movie.
Yeah.
Because he really was outstanding in it.
Okay.
He plays this tortured soul, very well.
Right.
Very, very well tortured soul. He is kind of like a tortured soul, I think. But I think most actors are. I think that they really don't know who they are. Like one time I told, when we were in Nicaragua, they asked him to make a speech, and he said, "I can't do that. I need a script." And I said, "Just be Bobby Kennedy, So he got into that thing, and then he was Bobby Kennedy.
Right.
And that was before the West Wing, so maybe he was Bobby Kennedy in the West Wing too.
Oh, it could be. Like there were some Bobby Kennedy things characteristics that you could see in in President Bartlett, that the
Yeah,
character
yeah,
in
he
the
was a
series.
liberal. He was a
Yeah,
liberal and always did the right thing.
yeah, and his and you got to give it to the Kennedys though, the oratory skills and the way that they present their speeches. There was yeah, there's Bobby Kennedy's
Um,
speech. It was
they had
particularly
great
Bobby
speech.
Kennedy's. Yeah,
They had great speechwriters. Really, they did. They hired the best. Did
yeah,
the John JFK and later when after he was assassinated for a little while, it was a guy named Goodwin, Richard Goodwin,
hmm
wrote their speeches. He had a terrible complexion, so he couldn't really be a public face, but he could write a speech like nobody's business, man. He did the one about don't don't ask what you can do for your country, ask what your country can do for you, or something.
yeah. That's a good one. Like
Yeah.
that's um I think that's the line that every president or the elected president wants to give at his or her inauguration. But then JFK stole it, or like he did it um, when
Where do
he
you
did.
live in? You live in Belgium,
Holland, Netherlands. Yeah,
Holland, Holland.
yeah. Um, well, but we don't have any like big how should I say, like big presidential runs and everything else. It's a whole different system. So um,
So you
the
vote?
yeah. Actually, in March, last March, people went to go to the polling stations to vote again for the parliament. So people voted, and then like yeah, the wheels came off the wagon. As in, the prime minister, he there was a um yeah, something that he met he screwed a lot of um not physically, but there was an incident that screwed over a lot of parents in 2018, 2019, and that all came to light late last year and early this year. So like we just had the elections, and then like 2 weeks after, like there was already a call for new elections because he was voted back into, because his party was the biggest one. So so it is they're still trying to find a coalition for parliament. But yeah, I do vote. I actually voted. I vote for there's actually a party for the animals in Holland. It's pretty like at first when I saw it, like I was like, what is this? But then you look at the program, their campaign and their manifesto and everything else, and which is it makes a lot of sense if if you're advocating for indigenous rights. Well, they don't advocate for indigenous rights, but like they do want climate justice and everything else that has a lot to do with our priorities. So my thinking was very much in line with theirs.
So there's like biodiversity and vegetarianism and things like
Oh
that.
yeah. That's well, they want to promote vegetarianism. They
No,
they even um they even made a video or documentary on it. It's Meet the Truth, as an
yeah,
EAT, and Meet the
yeah.
Truth. And yeah, one of the campaign slogans is "There's no Planet B," but that's like everyone uses that slogan, or "There's no Plan B." Um, so yeah, so I've been voting for them, and then
But you do. I mean, when you work, you're if somebody orders a steak, I mean, you don't say, "Oh no, we don't recommend steak."
I to be honest, like I'm a carnivore. I love steak.
Yeah.
I love barbecue, chicken wings and everything else. And then that's yeah, it's like it is almost um there's that if you find it for social justice or justice in general or climate justice, that there's people try to create this prototype of like this is what you need to be. You need to be vegan or
Yeah.
XYZ.
Yeah.
Whereas in the end, I think what also is super important is self-determination, is personal choice. Just yeah, do it with within reason. Like I don't eat meat every day. I just try to balance it. I try to have a balanced diet. Otherwise, if I would eat meat every day, I would turn into a sumo wrestler, I believe, and I wouldn't even be able to move out of my apartment or whatever. So I try to balance it out. So yeah, but yeah, if people offer me it like at day one, like there's sometimes they offer you to go on a dinner meeting, whatever, and usually it's either it's never a pizza place, because it's either an Italian restaurant or a steak restaurant. Like there's I've never been taken. They never took no, they never taken me to a different kind of restaurant. So like it's
So
either
there's no Chinese restaurants or Mexican restaurants or anything like that.
I've never had that experience though. Like I don't know. Did people take you on a dinner invitation to a
I was
Chinese?
in I was in Czechoslovakia once, and they invited
Wow.
me to dinner at a Mexican restaurant, and it was nothing like Mexican. It was it was like like the corn bits in a can, like the little
Mm-hmm.
corn.
Yeah.
That was the way that was supposed to be Mexican. I don't know. I don't know. No, I mean uh, they say that in San Francisco, if everybody went out to eat at the same time, there'd be a place for them to sit.
Mm.
This place is nothing but, and now that the pandemic's winding down and more restaurants are opening,
Yeah.
uh, there's a great variety of restaurants. Just whatever you're into, you can find one. I mean, it's Burmese. There's this great Burmese place with these two ladies, and they do cod. It
Cod.
is so fish. It's
Mm.
so good. It's just ridiculously good. But there's only 6 stools in the restaurant, so it's mostly takeout.
All right. Yeah. 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 How
But
long?
it's so good.
How long have you lived in San Francisco, by the way?
Oh, longer than you've been alive, dude.
I can imagine.
1970, around 1970, 78, more or less.
Wow.
76 or 78. I came here for a job. I was in Jerry Brown's administration, and I didn't particularly like the politics. I turned into a real bad guy.
Jerry Brown or you?
Me.
You? Oh,
Well,
really?
you have to do bad things when you're in politics. You have to. I was kind of like a hatchet man. I turned into it was the things that I was asked to do,
Mm.
and but it was he was very popular at the time. This was '70s, and this job opened up that did legal services for migrant farm workers.
Mm-hmm.
We provided civil legal assistance. So they needed a director, so I applied and got the job, and their headquarters was here in San Francisco.
Mm.
So I did that for a while. A lot of mostly Mexican, but there's a growing body of where the farm workers movement was beginning too.
Mm-hmm.
And so Governor Reagan, at the time Reagan was governor of California, tried to kill our program because we were messing with his agricultural support there. I mean, what there's an interesting thing about labor law in the United States. It excluded farm workers from the protections of labor law, so they had no right to organize or form a union.
Right.
And the rationale was that it was outside. It worked outside, so it was healthier,
Mm.
and they didn't need the protections of people who worked inside factories. They worked out in the fresh air, so they didn't need a union.
Yeah.
So the farm workers movement was not a union yet until Jerry Brown got to be governor. And then it was still a struggle, but Jerry Brown, I worked for the Agricultural Labor Relations Board for a while because there was a labor law passed in California for farm workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I got this job. And so we were kind of like working Oh, with the knowledge of the farm workers, and we didn't do anything that against the union. We tried to stay out of their politics, and were successful for a long time and staying out of Caesar's way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did that for about 8 years, and then I went to where was it? Oh, I started doing political asylum cases. Like it was a big program. It had about 70 lawyers. But then after a while, you start proposing the same solutions to the same problems. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because the problems are just I mean, the same. It was the same problems more or less, and I just said, no, this is ridiculous. I mean, I could have stayed there.
Yeah.
I mean, after 8 years, you're pretty well settled. Nobody's, but I didn't want to do that anymore. So I reinvented myself. I've done that several times, actually.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, first I got into politics, and then I reinvented myself into a legal aid lawyer, and then I started doing political asylum cases,
Mm-hmm.
and that got me interested in a lot of my clients were Central American indigenous people, uh, primarily from Guatemala, but there was some from El Salvador has an indigenous population as well as, and Nicaragua had the mosquitoes, but they weren't leaving because they had their land.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did a lot of that. I did political asylum cases. Got me interested in uh, in indigenous peoples actually, and international work. So that's when I met Martin Sheen on these delegations to Nicaragua. We had delegations to Guatemala, but mostly to Guatemala and El Salvador, where we were on the wrong side. I was deported twice from Salvador at gunpoint.
Really?
Yeah, it was before they had computers,
Mm.
so they had lists of personas non grata.
Yeah.
And so one time I arrived at the airport, and the guy started looking through these lists. And finally, they said, "Oh, you go ahead, go ahead." So I was leaving, and the guy said, "Wait, they found his name. We found it." So they took me back on the plane and put me back on the same plane, actually. This is a soldier with a gun, and flew me back to Guatemala. And then the next time went through Honduras to to Salvador, and to accompany some refugees that were going back to their villages. And when we got to the Salvadoran border, soldier came out and he had a gun, and he said, "You have to leave now. You can't come. You're not allowed in El Salvador."
Mm-hmm.
So I left. But yeah, that was interesting. So anyway, I started doing international work, and there's this organization called the International Indian Treaty Council at the time.
Yeah.
This was back in the day. It was a long time ago. And so I started. I didn't have. Let's see. The the political asylum program I was working with hired this right-wing Cuban to administer programs, and she did not like us
Mm.
because we were in solidarity with the FMLN and in Salvador, and we were with the left. I mean, it was lefties.
Yeah.
So she got rid of us. So I didn't have a job. So I said, well, I'll volunteer for this place until I get a job. So, but I stopped looking. It was interesting work. Uh, Although it was very unstructured. Let me put it that way.
Mm.
There's no, there's no, there's no need to just, you know, um, badmouth anybody. But it was unstructured. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
They had been going to Geneva. The ritual was every year they would go to Geneva to the Commission on Human Rights, give a 5-minute intervention, and that was it.
Yeah.
There was no use of mechanisms. There was no use of conventional remedies. So I started doing that. I started learning about that stuff. And I started doing complaints, communications with rapporteurs, discovered the CERD and their urgent action process, the CERT has always been good for indigenous peoples. I really, there's a guy from this English guy. He was excellent. He wrote a book on indigenous peoples. I forget his name, but he was good. We worked very well together, actually.
Hmm.
The CERT, the convention has a Article 6 that has jurisdictional limitations. And there's a pebble gold mine in Canada that was right next to the Athabascan village that we were trying to, in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we filed it was the U.S. was being reviewed. So we filed this letter saying, you know, this pebble gold mine is going to affect the caribou, I mean the moose and the wildlife in the water of this Alaskan village, even though it was a Canada.
Yeah.
And so there's a, I don't know if they still do it, but at the time they would meet with people prior to their session to be briefed on these issues. And so I pointed out to the guy that the jurisdictional limitation only applied to Article 6. This is a matter of statutory construction, but that the rest of it had no jurisdictional limitation.
Right.
So that the CERT could say Canada is violating the rights of the indigenous peoples of Alaska by allowing this gold mine, the Pebble mine. It's still an issue. Actually, the Pebble mine is still controversial even now. It's 30 years later. So he was real happy about that. I was real happy about that. So we got to be friends and we would talk, and it was a good relationship with the CERT we had. The United States is only a party to 3 conventions: Convention Against Torture, the Civil and Political Rights, and the CERT. Like, they're the only country in the world that has not ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Even Somalia has ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And they took a long time to do it because there was no government in Somalia for so long, you know. But the United States has never ratified it, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. But they did ratify the two protocols. One was the use of children in armed conflict, and the other one, I forget what it was about. But anyway, I think there's just one, the children in armed conflict. Like, you can't recruit anyone under 18. That's what it says. So I started doing those mechanisms, and then I got into the OAS Commission on Human Rights. The United States is not a party to the American Convention on Human Rights, so we couldn't use that, but we could use the, even though the United States says that they're not bound, by virtue of their membership, they're bound to the convention. That's part of the conditions of membership of the Organization of American States, is the applicability of the Declaration on Human Rights that the commission has jurisdiction on.
Right.
And so I started using that. It was great. And then the declaration came along. And so I started working on that, and worked on that at the commission level for, I don't know how long it took, 12 years. I don't know. Well, it was finally adopted by the new council in 2006. So that was 12 years. And then in the meantime, I worked on the mandate for the rapporteur on the rights of indigenous peoples with Mexico. We had made a good ally in Mexico, did a lot of things with Mexico, including the World Congress against Racism, WCAR. I was the chair of I was the representative of the international NGOs to the committee.
Wow.
Yes, 1970.
How did that go?
No, 2000. Oh, it was terrible. Well, it was not terrible, but it was bad.
Mm.
There was this group of South Africans from Sangoku, a South African Congress of NGOs, something like that, who didn't know anything about international work. And they were very militant. And they would use words like whatever means are necessary, which is espousing violence.
Yeah.
But they weren't conscious of that, they weren't conscious of the stupid things that they were doing. And they were the interface between us and the South Africa. They tried to take over the program and they did take over when we did a declaration on behalf of NGOs, they took over the chairmanship of that, but they didn't know what they were doing. So somebody, and I think it was a World Congress, who is it? World Congress of Churches or something like that, some group decided that they didn't like a paragraph, or they were convinced by somebody, because I know the guy Eugenio was kind of naive, and so somebody said, "Oh, you have to strike this section from the draft NGO declaration that talks about what was it? Something on one side, and then the other side, which was like an anti. It was part of the draft that how do you call it? The Jewish NGOs had submitted, and then the Jewish NGOs objected to some sections that had been submitted by the Arab NGOs. So there's a big struggle, and finally, the whole thing went in without having stricken those two sections, and the Jewish NGOs walked out. They were just, Eugenio was scratching his head. I didn't know it was going to be that serious. But yes, it was bad. But the thing is that it was the same world politic in the World Conference itself. There was a great deal of dispute between Israel and the United States and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So they failed in coming up with a good declaration too. They just didn't do it. And it's that same politic of there's no solidarity. I think one of the in terms of racism, really, and I think we both know what it is. There's no solidarity, particularly between like Jewish and Arabs. There's just no solid. I mean, Jews are cognizant that there is anti-Muslim feeling. I mean, really, and after 9/11, yeah, you know, wow. But they don't care. There's no solidarity there. And Arab and Jews, they're anti-Semites themselves, many of them, so, but they don't really care about people who are subject to anti-Semitism. As a matter of fact, and that happens within the United Nations as well as with the NGO world. And until there is any real solidarity, like I think it's coming, I do believe it's coming. I think the Black Lives Matter movement has spread worldwide, and I think that there is a lot of reaction by the developing world, by the relevant countries, or at least the NGOs, are recognizing that they are victims of this colonialism, that they're victims, that they don't want to be there. They don't want to do that anymore. They don't want companies stealing their resources and leaving them just poverty stricken. And that's the history of the world, that colonialism. And there's a movement, and I think you can see it really in the climate change movement, where people are really recognizing that they're not responsible for climate change. It's not personal, Like they say, well, if you plant the tree, that give us money and we'll plant the tree, and that covers your trip to wherever,
Yeah.
It's bullshit. I mean, it's the extraction, it's the oil industry that's really promoting all these false solutions just so they can keep up pumping oil and selling it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a realization at the worldwide that we don't need that. We don't need oil. We can do without it. We can start investing now
Yeah.
in renewables and phase them out.
Yeah.
And stop building pipelines. Let these things wear themselves out while we're busy really building a carbon-free future. And I think that there's a reaction. I belong to several groups. One is called Make the Polluters Pay. It's called Corporate Accountability is one group. We participate with. We talk about what the false solutions that are inherent in Article 6, things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that things are not going to go back to, there is no normal anymore. Things are not going to go back to where they were before. I think with regard to racism, I think the Black Lives Movement don't want to go back to the 1950s. They don't want to go back to Governor Reagan and his racism. They're building something, a new future. And I think
where's it going, do you think?
Honestly, I am optimistic.
Okay.
I am and I had not been, I mean, as far as humanity is concerned, I think we're done for. This is a terrible thing to say, but the momentum in climate change is so great that even if we were to stop, well, they stopped oil production during the pandemic. Oil, the use of oil went down about 8%, but there was still a rise in temperature and in the severity and frequency of climate events. Even the time when so immediately there was no reaction by, the momentum is big. So I think that in the end, there's going to be a great deal of suffering.
Right.
Africa is going to go through, climate change does not affect the different regions of the world in this uniformly. It's going to hit some places harder than others, although everyone's going to get hit. The United States is suffering from wildfires, from storms, primarily. A lot of cold is coming down from Canada because of some shift. But Africa is going to be affected severely, super severely by drought. There's already water wars. It's going to be a real humanitarian crisis in Africa, even if it's not already there. I think Africa is going to be the hardest hit. I think the world's forests are going to be very difficult to recover from fire. Even the Amazon is burning, and although those fires are set, that's purposeful. That's Bolsonaro and his cronies want more cattle. They want more soya production. They want to up that stuff they put in food. They want to up production of all these they're not native species. They're alien species, but they want plantations out of these things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the Amazon will recover. I know that Koika and others have been raising the issue a lot internationally about what's happening in Brazil, Colombia as well. Colombia is being taken over by the narcos and the business types. They have, in both Brazil and Colombia, and to a degree in Peru, it's business types. It's the ranchers and the farmers and the soya produce. They have these paramilitary people acting as their security, and they're killing people. And the thing is that we don't know, because they're not documented. These are like, they want land, they go and kill the families that are on the land, and who knows? This is out in the, it's a terrible situation. But anyway, in terms of climate change itself, there's a momentum. I think it's worthwhile trying to really lobby for, I'm really interested in Article 6, and we're getting together with some people in the human rights and climate change arena, but hopefully opening it up to others. Because I think we need to, inside, we need to ensure that market mechanisms and non-market mechanisms actually do result in mitigation, that they actually reduce, emissions.
Yeah.
And I think it's possible, but I think there's a lot of states like Brazil and China and Russia who don't mind oil production and they like it, So, I mean, China's investing in pipelines in Africa, for Christ's sake. A lot of the Western banks are investing in pipelines and coal. I mean, the Chinese are big on coal in Africa. Big. They're developing coal mining in Africa, for Christ's sake. So, but I also think that African states are also getting wise. They see what's going to. I mean, there was a statement by the Ugandan minister of something in one of the webinars I attended that talks about, if they really wanted to help Africa, they could start water projects. They could invest in infrastructure to try and for adaptation.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're investing for plantations in Uganda. They're investing in all this other stuff just to suck the country dry, like they've always traditionally done, without really helping people who live there. In fact, they're affecting, because of these plantations, what do they call it? The big one is, it's a food additive that they put in food to make it sweeter, to make it taste better. I forget what it's called. But these are plantation oriented. And so they're robbing the people of their food security and food sovereignty. They're actually creating problems. They're also, because they're chemically intensive and labor, they also affect very much water quality. So people can't hunt and fish the way they're accustomed to, grow small crops because their land is being taken, used for this for plantations. But I think that African countries are getting wiser. What they can do about it is another matter. But at least within the climate change Paris Agreement, they can insist that they actually accomplish something. That it's not just a shell game. These are a shell game with emissions. It's like, emissions are over here, we're over here. Where are the emissions? Well, here we're doing a red program here, and that's our emissions are over there in the Congo. In those trees, they're in the trees. Yeah, count the trees. You can count. I mean, it's a shell game. It's just a fraud. So I think it's equally important not only to try and get the Paris Agreement to do what it says its purpose is to reduce emissions and to promote adaptation. That's what the Paris Agreement talks about. That's what the purpose is. It's not to promote. Oh, well, they do talk about promoting sustainable development.
Yeah,
that's part of the mix of the climate change thing. Well, what is sustainable? Is it Monsanto and genetically modified seeds? Is that sustainable? Stuff like that. So that's why they need us. I think there's a realization that indigenous peoples do have a handle on adaptation, I think, to a degree.
Yeah.
And I think that they want to know what it is. But it's another matter, I mean, what do we want to tell them?
What do we need to be careful of in that conversation?
Oh, I think it's a lot of it is obvious. I mean, I'm not sure. But I know that we don't want Monsanto to get a hold of our seeds. So because they just stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
I think that there are some drought resistant seeds that we might be able to share. But then, you know, with some sort of agreement that Monsanto's not going to take it and rip it apart and make it genetically modifiable. And but they do. That's the way they patent. They take a seed and they change a gene and patent it because it's called an improvement, you know.
Yeah.
But there are other, you know, I think that's why it's important. I think with the working group on the LCIP to start talking to elders and to knowledge holders and ask them, what is it you don't want to share, and try to create an international. I mean, the real impact that I think of indigenous peoples in climate change is local. It's really based more on environmental concerns and the ecologies, the different ecologies.
Yeah.
Because I would think that there are some very similar traditional knowledge within certain ecologies. You know, forest ecologies, for instance, probably have a great deal in common with each other, and peoples in forests have a great deal in common with each other as to what makes a forest function, how to take care of a forest. Which really is leave it alone.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for these people, knowledge holders, to get together at an international level and talk about what do we want to tell them, what don't we want to tell them, and if there's no consensus, don't tell them.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that's it's so the work plan is really important in that respect. Is really the consultation with indigenous knowledge holders, and if they really are, you know, local communities that have traditional knowledge, certainly they should be welcome to participate. But I think we're on a good way. I think in terms of that dispute, I think we're doing good. We're doing all right. We'll do our thing, and if they want to come along, that's cool.
Yeah.
But we'll keep our equity with the states. I think that's the quandary for the states, but that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's climate change is going to be very destructive, and I think all we can do is try to keep it from being as destructive as it could be. I think both the Hopi and I think Frank was the same guy from the north, from the Mohawks, talk about the amelioration of suffering. They don't talk about the end of suffering. The prophecy talks about the amelioration of suffering, that we've passed the point of no return.
Even if we don't get the trying to stay below 1.5.
Oh, that's done.
It's done.
Unfortunately, we can still do under 2. I think we can talk about 1.5 as being an achievable goal, but only so far as to force the issue to a greater degree.
Yeah.
But I believe we've passed 1.5. Maybe 1.7 now, 1.6. Talking about parts per million of carbon. When you look about like 360 was the magic. You know, they got that organization in the north in the United States, 360.org.
350 was it? 350.
350.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're over 400 now.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
So I made a very bad joke to the director of 350. He gave up and he turned it over to somebody else, and now he's a good guy.
Was it Bill McKibben?
McKibben, right?
Yeah.
So I said, if you change your name to 400.org, you could declare victory. It's a bad joke. Bad joke.
It's a good bad joke. It's a good bad joke. How did you because you have the knowledge to know. You've been through it. How did you experience the whole Paris negotiations? For me, it was super exhausting. But how did you experience it?
The whole Paris thing was, well, actually, it wasn't the Paris thing so much, except that we didn't know about Article 6.
Yeah.
During the negotiations. A lot of people knew, but nobody was talking, In fact, we had a funder who after the, because Article 6 is only about that much. It's only one article out of 320, I mean, what possible harm could it cause, We were asked by a funder, because I called it the WTO of the air or something like that. Anyway, I didn't call it that. We have this, in one of our press releases, somebody wrote a quote for me, that it was like the WTO of the air or something like that, or it was like a trade agreement. I don't know. But a funder challenged that, They said, well, why do you think that? And so take a look at Article 6. They don't even call it, they don't call these they don't call these credits, they don't call them carbon credits or carbon offsets.
No. Yeah.
They call them internationally transferable mitigation outcomes.
It moves.
So what's wrong with that? What's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so what's the big deal? And so I tried to point out that that this was setting up a system of carbon trading and offsets that was really going to allow them to continue to pollute. I don't know if he bought it or not, but it certainly turned out to be true.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that's not resolved is Article 6, really, and some pertinent things like the governing body that's supposed to receive the information. One of the more difficult things I think for us is going to be at the COP. This, I'm beginning to, the intersessional, I don't know if you're going to be looking in on the intersessional. I signed up.
Me too.
I spent a good part of the day yesterday or Monday, learning how to plug in.
Yeah.
It was, I always had trouble with Microsoft Meet, but I think I got it down. But I was taking a look at the agenda, and which is not out. There's no specific agenda except for, I mean, there's a couple of things that are there. Article 6 is way at the end, but they do mention Article 6 in the draft agenda. But we can't reach the submissions. States have been submitting papers for these. But I tried to get into the submissions portal and they wouldn't let me in. You need a code. So maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I would like to see who's saying what about what, There is also mention of the working group, facilitated working group, with regard to talking to different agencies within the UN. And I think they're scheduling a meeting for the working group. Oh, well, I guess it'd be virtual face-to-face. But all I can see them doing, what do you think about that? Because all I can see them doing is talking about their work program.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit about the website.
Yeah, it is. I think there's some meetings scheduled for during this intersessionals, and the portal will be launched. I thought it's already launched. Like they keep launching it. I don't know. It's I don't know what's going on. But it's like a walkthrough through the portal. Which, like, can you remember during the early? I think it was in Marrakesh, Marrakesh, that we already got the initial ideas from some parties that they wanted this platform to be a online portal, like a database of traditional knowledge. That's what they wanted. So we like we immediately like killed that. At least we thought we thought we killed it. So what I do not want this portal to be is a trying to circumvent like the early position that we made, and then down the line that it still becomes something like that. It's not focused on a portal right now. The thing is that there's no time for the facilitator working group to do this work. Like 2020, everything was canceled and then or like postponed. And then the first meeting that we had of the facilitator working group, then the secretary said, well, we will continue the original agenda or the original timeline. Meaning, so you just lost a year. So there's in terms of activities, like you talked about, like the whole idea of the platform was to connect the local with the international, like get the knowledge holders in there. Instead of doing all these studies based out of like from
UNESCO,
UNESCO and all these other people, like the initial idea of the, and I think that's why people like yourself, myself, Estebancio and Johnson and everyone else, we really wanted to have the local to connect to the international. That's what the whole idea was. And I'm not sure, I'm not convinced that it will happen within this work plan, because right now, like they're finalizing the work plan, and then they have to go into review year, and then they have to like doll up a little bit because they have to go into new negotiations for the new work plan and a new facilitator working group. And so it is, you don't get, it's almost like administration. You get to you have a presidency of 4 years, but you get 100 days to actually govern. And I think we missed our first 100 days because they maintained the timeline by not postponing it. And then I can still hear Estebancio saying like we need time. We need, and during the facilitator working group meeting, Hindu said it, like we need time we cannot to consult with we need to consult with the regions, and we need time for that. And still they wanted, the secretariat and the UNFCCC wanted to maintain the timeline as scheduled. So I'm not sure what. Yeah,
it is going to take it's going to take a lot longer, at least a year longer. And I think there's a question really as to who's going to pay for it. True. I mean, certainly people want to talk to the knowledge holders and do it face to face, because a lot of our people do not take to the internet, and in fact, even if they did, I mean, there's access problems in Africa, particularly in Asia.
Yeah.
About access to the internet that would allow them to do virtual meetings. And there's also language difficulties as well. A lot of our traditional people don't speak the colonialist language.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of really practical impediments that we have to overcome. And I think what we have to do, and I think it's part of the work plan, is capacity building in behalf of, is having regional and local meetings with knowledge holders, explaining what the thing is about and seeing if they're interested, having them make decisions about who's going to represent them, if anybody, if they're interested or not,
mm-hmm. Getting
them together. I think one of the things that we should try and do, and I hope that we can do it through our various conferences, IEN has a conference and Treaty Council will have a conference, is to try and bring elders to these conferences to talk about this,
mm-hmm.
And see what they can do in terms of outreach, and try and do outreach. And that should be happening in all the regions of the world, and in fact, in all the countries of the world, so that we can try and see what it is we want to share, what it is we don't want to share, and if it's a valuable exercise. But that takes money, that takes resources, and I'm not sure that the UNFCCC is going to be paying for it. I think that now that the United States is in and they're paying dues, I think they're going to be flush again. I think they're going to have a lot of money, a lot more money than they're used to anyway.
What is the change that you expect or anticipate to see with U.S. coming back to the Paris Agreement?
Well, they're not really coming back to the Paris Agreement technically.
No,
It took,
true.
so but they do owe the dues. So they owe 2 years worth of dues,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3. I'm not sure how many years they owe dues. So that's going to be a lot of money that the UNFCCC does have that it didn't have before. So that's one positive aspect of it. Is as long as that money is used in the productively. There's also, I think it's going to reawaken a real interest in mitigation. Biden has talked a lot about, and the people in his administration have talked a lot about really keeping it in the ground, and in the sense of investing heavily in alternative sources of energy, solar and wind primarily,
Mm-hmm.
because they know the pitfalls of nuclear. In fact, nuclear, I think, is excluded from 6.2. I'm not sure, but I think it is excluded.
Mm.
They know. I mean, what is it?
Fukushima?
Yeah, I mean and of course Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
are object lessons that I think that they can't ignore. Also, I think there's a real problems with dams. I think that even the Three Gorges Dam and the one in Brazil have had consequences that they never foresaw. I mean, it changes the whole ecology of the place.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of problems with that. So I think that one of the tasks that we have is to, inside the convention is trying to get them to do some sort of safeguards, human rights safeguards. There's still an opportunity to do that. There's an opening to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a group of states that are thinking of, I mean, we know that we have support from the small island states and from the least developed countries, because they're also in that boat.
Yeah.
As indigenous peoples, they're in that boat. There's also these countervailing interests from Russia and China and Brazil. But even there, I mean, China's so big that they can do both. They can actually do mitigation
Yeah.
and invest in coal.
Yeah.
And that's really one thing the Netherlands does a lot too. It says, "Oh yeah, we're clean. We're going to be completely solar by next Tuesday." But
Mm-hmm.
they keep selling their oil. Keep selling their oil. Although I understand there's going to be big offshore windmills that they plan to.
Yeah, they plan to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they keep selling their oil. And that's really, the United States is a big oil producer.
Yeah.
Although the governor of California is trying to get fracking outlawed as a health measure,
Mm.
which it is.
Yeah.
But then there's always these Indian tribes, like Frank represents them, that believe in. They used to be called the energy resource tribes. Willie Littlechild that's where he comes from.
Mm.
Oil. There's a lot of indigenous peoples who have oil on their land that want to sell it.
Mm.
So we have our own contradictions, but obviously, as a position, I think the caucus has always taken the position they're against offsets, and as long as I'm there, there's not going to be a consensus to change it. So I don't know. I think there are opportunities that we have that the United States is bringing to the table that it didn't have before.
Mm.
And I think real mitigation is one of them. But we also understand that oil companies are very powerful, economically powerful, and the banks that finance them are also powerful. They have a big presence within UNFCCC. That's always been known.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about it, because that's the way they do business. That's what the UN does.
Mm.
That's the way it does business. if Monsanto has an interest, then they're going to be there. And that the conversations about agriculture are going to include Monsanto's people, whether they're there or if it's just the U.S. Chamber of Commerce or the International Chamber of Commerce. But they're going to have people there. And they're going to be pushing food production. Not food security, not food sovereignty, but food production. And that's really what the Paris Agreement talks about, without affecting production. But there's also a very strong element talking about food security. I think the Committee on Food Security is bringing that to the table and talks about what is sustainable agriculture. And when you talk about sustainability, you can't talk about plantations. They're not sustainable. What is sustainable is small producers. And that is 70% of the world is fed by small producers. So, and it's just the rich countries that can afford the potato chips and the whatever, the snacks. Well, this organization, I'm on the board of the Rainforest Action Network, has a big campaign against snacks, Frito-Lay, and those people. Man, I wish I could read. It really is getting to me now. This tree thing, this tree that grows palm oil.
Okay, yeah.
Palm oil, and that's used to enhance the flavor of food.
Yeah.
And so they put them in snacks, Frito-Lays, and potato chips, whatever, because it enhances the flavor. But who needs it? I mean, it's not like, potato chips are gonna, be awful without it. So we have this big campaign against palm oil. Like Indonesia is terrible. Indonesia is deforesting vast amounts of forest, killing indigenous peoples for palm oil production. And they're expanding. And indigenous peoples are just getting driven off the land. Their food security is just gone. I heard a very moving account of it a couple of years ago here in California. Jerry Brown had a summit here, a climate summit, and they had this Indonesian indigenous person. He said he didn't know how to speak his own language because his family had been driven off by the palm oil industry, and they just went into, I don't know if it was an urban area or what, but it was like over 2 generations. You can lose language over 2 generations. But also their customs, this community. It was really very moving presentation. And that's happening not only in Indonesia, but it's also starting to happen in Brazil and Argentina, Brazil and Peru, where tropical forests are being devoted more and more to palm oil and soya, but palm oil primarily because it is profitable. And so they have these companies with their private security firms going out and killing people. Same thing is happening in Guatemala with regard to mining. It's Canadian mining companies that are killing Guatemalans who don't want mining.
Yeah.
They're private, and these are Canadian they're supposed to be civilized. What's up with that? It's but anyway, I think we have things that we can work for. I think the United States is going to bring some sort of go back to the purposes to the degree that they can. I think I think Europeans may follow that, may see, because Europeans have generally been, I don't know, until Paris, I thought that they were really on our side. But
what happened in Paris to make you believe that
I went to talk to a Swiss. I said,
Mm.
Who would be in favor of human rights out of all these? I said the Swiss. I mean, Geneva's a city devoted to human rights. So
Mhm.
I went to talk to the Swiss representative, and he says, well, he said, when you're negotiating a trade agreement, what? You want to focus on specifics. You can't just be too general. I said, but this is not a trade agreement. And he looked and he started to walk away. He says, well, I guess it is if you're selling the forest, but it's our forest that you're selling.
Yeah.
He just walked away. He said the wrong thing.
Mm.
But that's the way that we're looking at Paris is it was like a trade-offs, And the whole trade-off was Article 6. And nobody can, I mean, there's all these really good things about national action plans. Great, great, great. How to include indigenous peoples in national action plans, although they don't. But okay, this ACE, action for climate empowerment. How do you empower the local communities to participate in the national action plans and then participate in climate change? You have some governance issues. There's going to be how do you report they're already pretty close to ending that. How do you report the NDCs?
Mm.
I mean, they have to be quantifiable now in terms of greenhouse gases, and they have to be reported to a certain panel that's going to be doing something. But is it just going to receive the information and say thank you very much, or is it going to say, well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
What this shows is that your country is really emitting more. So we're not talking about a reduction of emissions.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, like, there's this thing, I couldn't believe this. Brazil is receiving from the Green Climate Fund hundreds of millions of dollars for reducing emissions.
Mm.
So all they've had to do in the past is say, well, see, here in this province, we've actually reduced emissions. So give us our money.
Yeah.
And you see, well, wait a minute, what about the fires you're setting? How does that count? Or what about the rest of the stuff you're doing that really is increasing emissions? When you take a look, the net is an increase in emissions.
Yeah.
I said, well, no, that's not the agreement. The agreement is only we get credit for a reduction of emissions and we can show that we reduced emissions.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? I couldn't, I swear, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it that they actually are going to give them money. They already given them hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars in the pipeline for that same project, reducing emissions. So that's when I started getting into the Green Climate Fund and talking to CL. What's her name? That lady, she's really smart. What's her name?
CL, Erica Lennon.
Erica
Yeah.
is good. Erica's
Yeah,
good.
she's really good.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I wrote, I said, how is this possible? She said, yes, it has been controversial. So I've been collecting stuff from Brazil,
Yeah.
violations of human rights, deforestation stuff, so that when the project comes out, we can at least say, wait a minute,
Right. Yeah.
there has to be some standards here. You just can't say, here's your money. There have to be some, and besides, they violate human rights. I mean, this is supposed to be for sustainable development. It's supposed to be in the context of sustainable development.
Mm-hmm.
How can the violations of human rights be sustainable?
Yeah.
Or even development? So we're waiting for the project to come up. In the meantime, the Green Climate Fund is actually adopting SES, or what do they call it? Environmental and social standards. Social and environmental standards, SES.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have a relatively decent Indigenous Peoples standard. Whether or not, so right now, what we're hoping is that the Green Climate Fund will adopt these standards and hold their projects accountable. with regard to these standards. So that if they're actually reducing biodiversity or if they're actually killing indigenous peoples, that perhaps they shouldn't get their money for the project that's killing indigenous peoples. I've discovered too that it's a very complicated process. They have a fiscal agent, sort of, and then they have another party that's supposed to oversee the thing on behalf of the Green Climate Fund. And like UNEP is in league with a mining company. A United Nations agency is in league with this company that's violating human rights. How is that possible? It also, I think it was the World Wildlife Fund, although they deny it vehemently. They yell at you when you accuse them on the phone.
Do they?
Yeah, they get pissed off. They go, what? We don't violate human rights. But they oversee a project for the security people, that is the army, was hired as security for this project, and they're killing people. They're violating human rights. So they're not violating human rights directly, but they're overseeing a project where it's done. And their solution, to complain to the authorities. I'm sorry. You have to have a sense of humor about this. You know,
You do.
You do. You can't. So I wrote something I work on this backing on climate change thing, and I wrote something. It does them little avail to complain to the people that are torturing them in the first place, you know. But I think it was I forget, it was one of those big NGOs, the billionaire NGOs.
Okay.
There's 2 or 3 of them that really have to start applying human rights internally themselves. You know, CI is one, although I must say that they are trying at least, but they're so big. CI is a billionaire, and so is World Wildlife Fund's a billionaire. You have IUCN that's pushing carbon pricing, you know, because they also have a business side. IUCN is composed of business, NGOs, and scientists.
Yeah.
The tripartite governance. So business is really for oil, banking. There's all kinds of, I mean, you asked me why I don't just go home, you know, just start watching Netflix as a full-time job. It's interesting. It's interesting. And the thing is that I don't have a personal interest in this anymore. I last summer, when was it? I don't know. There was a period of time when I realized that humanity was doomed. I got it, you know,
Really?
and it put me in a funk, man. I was grieved for a long time, actually. I grieved. And then I thought, well,
what happened?
I'm
Like,
going to start. I'm going to start enjoying things. I'm going to start enjoying life.
True. Yeah.
I'm going to start enjoying the things that I like. Eating good food is nice and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Enjoy my family. Go visit my grandson. You know, check out my friends. Because there's nothing that really personally I can do. I'm no longer personally involved in this. I took that burden off. So now it's just interesting. If we can do things that are helpful, great, you know. I think that's wonderful. I think, and if things don't work out and the oil companies win and keep on pumping oil and selling it cheap so that people are buying the idea that they need oil in order to fight climate change. Well, you know, you did what you could, and I can take some solace in that. So
that must have been a very powerful experience then, if you come to that realization last summer.
It was after Madrid. So it must have been like early this year.
Yeah.
No, it was powerful, but for a lot of us, and probably you included too, but a lot of people, a lot of us make it personal. Like we carry this burden. If this doesn't get done, it's my fault, you know. We or like how can I say it's a personal burden that we accept, you know, anti-racism, social justice, anti-colonization, you know. It's like we have to change it, or else what, you know, or what? Well, it's not personal. It's not personal at all. And
Yeah.
once you start seeing it from that perspective, it's not the just crushing burden. Like when I first started doing legal work on I told you I was a farm worker program, helping farm workers in political asylum cases too. If you go on a case by case basis and you do like one client at a time, that's great. You know that you actually have some control. You actually can actually do good things for people. But when you start looking at the mega development, you know, like racism, I mean, you can certainly support. Like I went to a demonstration Saturday, the first demonstration in a long time, pro-Palestinian, pro-Palestine. And so you can do, but I did it for the fun of it. You know, I hadn't been in a demonstration in a long time.
Right.
But I think that you have to get a little distance away from the greater evils of the world, and racism is one of them. I think, actually, with regard to racism, I think things are coming around. I think we probably have some changes in Europe as well that you've seen. So we just have to wait for these old guys to die, you know, all the Nazis and the, because I think in the United States, I think that's going to happen. But right now, actually, I've been surprised too that it's a lot of racism that's projected out, you know, in the media is women. And it's reasonable because women do carry culture. Women are the carriers of culture. I don't care what they say about men. I really think it's women who teach their children, who carry on the rituals and the organizational culture. And so it's a lot of women too that are, I mean, those are the people we have to reach. But you try and tell a woman that, I know if I started talking like that in IEN, I would get my head cut off. But they do. They carry culture, and I think we have to really pay attention to what women are doing. But anyway, so what's your take on climate change and all that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the funny thing is that I stumbled into it in Paris. Like before that, I was just only focused on human rights, and obviously there was awareness on climate change. And you remember during the working group on indigenous populations, that was like the Friday agenda item. That was like, and back then there wasn't even talk about climate change. It was about like disappearing states or disappearing communities due to natural something. It was initiated by what's her name again? Madame Hampson, Francoise Hampson. Remember her from the working group days?
No.
She initiated it. She was from the University of Sussex. Amazing. Like it's very fierce. I love that. I love that in experts that are like very fierce and
yeah, they get all pissed off.
Yeah, when they like get really pissed off. Well, she wasn't pissed off though. Like you could see that she was determined,
passionate.
Yeah, passionate. You know, and then I remember that during working group days that. And by the way, thank you so much for the work that you did to help my mom with the communications. I remember to to the work group on arbitrary detention with the traditional dancers
Yeah.
and the flag. Not many people know that. Like, and you helped my mom a lot with that and other
No, she was a
communications.
good lady. I liked her a lot.
Yes, and there's so yeah, so Madam Hampson, my mom gave a statement, and she gave the statement. She gave it copy to Madam Hampson, and she was so strong and determined that she gave a very powerful and passionate statement about human rights, and that she just after her speech, she got up and she walked over to Indonesia and she just gave them like, here it is, like you don't need to wait for the translation. Like, here it is, here's the paper. Go do something about it. And I miss that. I miss that. The fierceness, the really standing up for human rights. They still do, obviously, but like the you can sense that some people are really some people are academics and you need them as well. Some people are actually like people from the like you can really feel that they have like skin in the game. Anyway, well, she brought up that Friday like 2-hour session on Indigenous peoples being affected by human rights being violated by disappearing Indigenous people, something along those lines, and it had to do something with climate change. And I got parachuted into COP21. I wasn't even planning on going to COP21, but someone Samson Viewley from Solomon Islands, he couldn't make it to Paris. I said, hey, and we knew each other through the World Conference process, and said, hey, we need negotiators from the Pacific. I can go. Do you want to take my place? I'm like, sure, why not? And that's how I rolled into climate change, into the process. And I can really, what you said about that burden, it really resonates with me. Not just climate change, but like the movement, like the Maluku movement in general. I can feel that. And then on top of that, next to that as well is well, during the platform negotiations, like you take it, even though you don't try to show it, but you take it personal. Everything that's being said, and you feel, you feel that some people are trying to trigger you. They're trying to provoke a reaction, and it is you got to be super, how should I say it, intentional and about it, and knowing that, like, all right, now he or she is trying to trigger me, and you have to try to be very composed. But you do feel that it's that, and I've only been this like I don't know, a third of in this movement, a third of the amount of time that you're in it, at least. And you can feel the backpack that it is. Like, like I try to call it a backpack, as in burden. It sounds for me now, like when I'm older, I might change it to burden, yes, but like now it's like backpack, because people keep adding stuff to it. They keep adding stuff to it. Oh, please do
Actually,
this.
you keep adding stuff to it.
I let them do it.
You
Yeah.
can say no.
That's
what I've been doing lately. That's what I've been doing lately, is saying, oh, it's hard. You can't do that.
It's hard for me to say no, though. And I don't know, like, and because first of all, I love I see it as not as work, but as a game. I'd like to be part of it. I'd like to be part of the whole the game that is being played. And I'm trying to downplay like whatever's going on with Article 6 and carbon, and like pushing around carbons, and like making sure that that doesn't happen, and human rights violation and everything else. However, the business of trying to of negotiating and trying to influence decision making, I love that. And yeah, so sometimes I let for a while, for a very long time, I just let people just add things to this backpack. Now I try to limit it by deploying like filters. All right, is this, because I have this like this in my mind, if it, and I think that is constructed through self-awareness. I think, like, all right, what do you like to do? What do you think you're good at? And so I try to stay away from SDGs, for one, the Sustainable Development Goals. I got nothing to do with it. People like Jenny Nyazi, and I was like, she's good at it, but like I've been asked like to be part of it, but it's I really got enough on my plate right now. And yeah, SDGs. And then this, there's a food systems summit coming up.
Yeah.
So like yeah, people are trying to pull me into that one as well, but like it's in a way it's flattering, and one side is flattering. On the other side, like I do realize that the movement in general is spread thin if people keep gravitating towards, not to blow smoke up on my own ass, but if people keep gravitating towards like, oh yeah, me or some other people, like, yeah, then my yeah, how should I say it, like conclusion in a way is like that we as a movement are really spread thin, as in there's yeah, yeah, people keep going to the same people. I don't know how do you see it?
Well, that used to be a lot truer than it is now. I mean, when you take a look at my generation, there's very few of us left, but there's still a lot of people around. Maybe it's me and Kim and Andrea. Grace probably, but Grace is always, I don't know about Grace. But when you take a look at the caucus internationally, there's a lot of new people as far as,
True.
following us in their 40s, like you maybe, and others. And there's new people coming in too. They're not as, it's a different generation. I think we, or at least I tended to be more technically minded, trying to take advantage of whatever spaces we could make within the United Nations system. Like I think the permanent forum, the mandate for the permanent forum was really a really good thing that we did. Estebancio, me, and Juan Dion. I think we got it done. And then when I suggested to Mexico, Guatemala to turn in do a rapporteur on the rights of indigenous peoples, there were some indigenous peoples that actually objected, didn't want it. Yeah, because Miguel Alfonso Martinez said, "You're trying to replace the working group with this, and I won't have it." So he convinced Halmar, that guy's always drunk from Iceland. No, not from Iceland, from Greenland. Halmar Dahl.
Oh,
those
from
guys
the
drink,
Inuit.
Yeah, those guys drink a lot. Him, and sometimes you can smell it. But anyway, Halmar, and there was a woman from Canada who was also convinced that she actually chewed me out for trying to get rid of the working group.
Really?
Yeah. And we were the only indigenous organization supporting it when they came up for a vote from the council, from the commission. Couldn't believe it. And then Miguel Alfonso, I used to have tapes. We had a friend up in the ceiling of the meeting place.
Mhm.
They tape all the meetings. They tape them all.
Oh,
So
really?
he would make,
Ah.
yeah. Well, I don't know if they still record them now, but he would make cassette tapes.
Mm.
And I used to have, and I don't know if I still have them, but it was a cassette tape of the meeting where the resolution on the President Forum came up before the council, and Miguel Alfonso Martinez was trying to keep it from happening. And so he was suggesting amendments to amendments to amendments to this. He really tried his best, and it's really confusing. The tape of it is really just out of sight. It's just funny. But anyway, it got done. It got done. But he always blamed me for getting rid of the working group.
He is an intimidating person, though.
He was. Yeah, he died a long time ago.
Yeah, he did.
Well, yes, if you let him be.
I was super intimidated. I was not even intimidated. I was legitimately scared of this guy. Because like when he did a working group.
He made Madame Diaz cry.
Did he?
Yes.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah. Oh, and then I say wow, but then again, I can see like how he's because also the way he chairs a meeting, he was super strict. Wow. It was if you're a little bit off topic, you get the gavel. And everyone and yeah, or he cuts you off as well. Like, all right, next speaker. He was, yeah. I was super intimidated by that.
Madame Diaz was a chairperson for like 12, I don't know how long, from 40. When was it? 82. I guess the working group started in 82. And then it ended when the reorganization.
Yeah, 2005, was it?
5, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
But then it got adopted all over again. I mean, really the council, the major change of the council was that it moved up in rank. So now it's a council and it reports directly to the General Assembly, where before it used to have to go through ECOSOC.
Yeah.
But the rest of the structure, the working group became the MRIP, the group of experts became or was a result of the working group on indigenous. It was the subcommission on prevention of minorities, prevention of discrimination and protection of minorities.
Yeah.
So it became just a group of experts. And it also became more democratic, too. Anybody could join, you know. But that was the only change. Madame Diaz was the chairman until the very last year. And Miguel forced her to resign. Almost physically, like really came on really strong. And he made her cry. And she said, okay, you fuck, if you want, you know, if you want it that bad, go ahead. You know? So that's when he became the chairman. And he always had an agenda. Always had a political agenda, which is bad for an expert. Bad for an expert. And like he did a study on treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements between indigenous peoples and states.
Yeah.
Treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. In his first report, he said that he was not going to study Africa because there were no indigenous people in Africa. Everyone in Africa was indigenous. That's what he said. The reason he said that was because a lot of the African states didn't want to be bothered with indigenous peoples. And a lot of the Cuba's constituency was African states. They supported Cuba in a lot of what they did, you know. So, Miguel, listen, what's this about no indigenous peoples in Africa, dude? You know, what? And he said, look, because they're no indigenous peoples in Africa. And there's very few in Asia. They're all indigenous in Asia. So then Vicky Corpus got into the act and said, obviously, this is wrong. This is wrong. Actually, I've been trying to get the MRIP to renew the study of treaties, to do an update, so that in fact they could correct that. I think it's a stain. I think that report is a stain. But he was adamant. There are no indigenous peoples in Africa. What?
Wow.
He wanted to limit it to the Americas.
It makes sense now that only indigenous peoples from North America refer to that study.
Because they're the only ones that
yeah.
There are other treaties. There are other treaties and constructive arrangements. Like he said, the Kuna Revolution resulted in the Kuna Revolution was prompted by the United States because they wanted to separate Panama from Colombia. It used to, the whole thing up to Costa Rica belonged to Colombia, but the United States wanted to build the canal, and they didn't want to deal with Colombia. So the Kunas revolted. The Kunas revolted as part of a general uprising against the Colombian government, and all of a sudden there was a country in Panama. And so the United States then negotiated with this new country to build their canal.
Right.
And they told the Kunas, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to be under the new Panamanian government? Do you want to continue with us, the US? And the Kuna said, we want to continue with you, with the US. Because they could play off the Panamanian government against the US. The US was much stronger. And it wasn't a big deal with it. The United States say, but if they went under Panama, then Panama could do whatever they want and the United States wouldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
That was Nelly Cantule. So that's an interesting. So the United States forced, or how can I say forced? What do I know? So, but the United States suggested to Panama that there be legislation implemented to recognize the comarca or Cunayala as a self-determining autonomous region. And so Panama very graciously passed this legislation. It was only applied at the time to the Kunas. The Emberas and other indigenous peoples of Panama were kind of left out. But the Kunas start in Panama, but they go into Colombia too. There's a big Kuna peoples in Colombia. But anyway, so Miguel Alfonso was unable, he got sick or something, and he had visits scheduled with in Hawaii and in Panama. And so he asked me, and I don't know why, but he asked me to cover for him, to go to these places. And then he met me in Guatemala. But I went to Hawaii and I went to Panama. And then he caught up with me in Guatemala and I helped him with the study there, but he's an asshole. I really didn't like him very much. Because he was so just pedantic, I think.
Yeah.
It's the way, this is the way it is. And I know more than you do. So when I wrote my report to him on Panama, I said, this is a constructive arrangement between the Panamanian government and the Kunas. And he said, no, because a constructive arrangement is when the indigenous peoples actually have a negotiating role, a part. It's between them. But this was unilateral on the part of Panama. And you can't say that this was an arrangement with the Kunas. And I said, well, how can it not be? It granted them autonomy, for Christ's sake, Yeah. This is advantageous to the Kunas. And he said, no, it's not a constructive arrangement. And then, so what he did in Guatemala, what we did, actually, I followed him around. I was his gopher. I arranged for his room. I arranged for his visits, his transport, whatever, you know. What an asshole. But anyway, he studied the peace agreement between Guatemala and the rebel forces as part of a constructive arrangement.
Yeah.
But the fact is that the Guatemalan rebels were not indigenous. So
Yeah. True. They used the indigenous peoples.
They used them,
Yeah.
and then they forgot about them.
Yeah.
But no, he said it was a constructive arrangement. No, but in fact, obviously he did a. We tried to make use. At the time, I tried very much to make use of his study, and I once finally made sense of it and wrote it down, and then I lost what I wrote because it had citations. You know, this where he said here, and over here he said that, and over here he said that. So these are right. So anyway, but Canada and the United States in particular treaties are very important, and they are. It is time to redo the study, particularly with North America. In most treaties, like this U.S. treaties, Canada's Canada's different.
Yeah.
But in Canada has actually treaty districts, like Saskatchewan is Treaty 8.
Yeah.
You know,
Alberta Treaty 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they and right now they're trying to screw the people in British Columbia with this modern treaty process. It's such a trick. I actually took that to CERD as well. I was asked to take this to CERD, and they agreed. I mean, the modern treaty process in British Columbia is we'll lend you money so you can negotiate with us. And if we negotiate successfully, you don't have to pay us back. But if we don't negotiate successfully, then you owe us for the money that we gave you. So the tribes hired lawyers.
Yeah.
And so the first thing Canada said was, well, you have to give up your Aboriginal rights, your rights of use, let's say, before we negotiate. So the tribes tried to negotiate. They hired the lawyers, and they said, well, no, it doesn't look like we're going to come to agreement. And they said, okay, you owe us $3 million.
Oh man.
So pay us back, or we'll take it out of your money. You know, we'll take it out of your grants because the government gives the tribes money.
Yeah.
So CERD thought that there was something wrong there too. But it didn't help us with Canada. Now Canada has a different tact, and I think they finally forgave everybody. But that was. But in the United States, anyway, there were treaties with Native Americans up until about 1872, I think, something like that. And they were considered constitutionally treaties between sovereigns. Like American Indians were not citizens of the United States, but citizens of a sovereign Indian nation. And the treaties were government to government. They were, in fact, and I think he came to this conclusion, they were under international law at the time, the law of nations, which were superseded by the Vienna Convention on Treaties back in the 50s, I guess, 40s. Under the law of nations, they were, in fact, two countries, a result of two countries. Agreement. That was a treaty. And according to common law at the time, and US law as well, whatever was not specifically treated in the treaty was reserved to the Indians. So like in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship with the Shoshone State, it was a treaty that allowed free passage. It was a treaty of peace and friendship. So the Shoshone allowed settlers to cross, but not to stay, to cross Nevada to come to California, which is they all wanted to do.
Yeah.
Somehow that became, that's all, that was it. That was it. It allowed a trading post or
Mm.
two along the route. And it also talked about artesian mining, when you pan for gold and things like
Yeah.
that. That was interpreted by the Supreme Court as, oh, no, there was a legislation passed in the 50s because this was a drag on title. I mean, people in Nevada, like the casinos,
Mm-hmm.
build these gigantic casinos, but the land still belonged to the Indians technically.
Mm-hmm.
So they passed this law that said was going to compensate Indians for the loss of land. Well, the Shoshone and the Lakota and I'm not sure who else. There were 3 or 4 tribes. It was called the Land Compensation Act or something like that. And the court, they said, no, our land is not for sale. We don't want money. It's still our land.
Yeah.
And the court said, no, you can't. The legislation calls for finding out how much we owe you. You can't litigate title. That's beyond the jurisdiction of the court. So here, you lost the land by accretion, or they even invented some bullshit. And so now we owe you 6 cents an acre, which was worth at the time. You lost your land, and so here's the money, which is about $1,000 per person of the tribe. And they tried to do the same thing in Lakota territory. And there are 3 or 4 tribes that said no. The other tribes took the money. They figured, what the fuck, we're not going to get it back, so we don't take the money. But with Western Shoshone said no, it's our land. And now there's an interesting case came up before the Supreme Court where Gorsuch, a new Trump appointee, said, wait a minute. They said, the United States signed treaties with the Indians, and then you bring it to us to cheat them. I'm not going to be a party to that. The Supreme Court is not going to be a party to you screwing Indians out of their whatever based on a treaty that doesn't say anything like that. So you deal with it. And it concerned land in Oklahoma. And so the Oklahoma Indians now are recognized as owners of this very relatively large, although very polluted land, polluted by oil development and oil industries, and that the state of Oklahoma allowed them to pollute. And that gives rise to a lot of really interesting situations, like in Standing Rock, the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, was going to come through. They actually dug up a burial ground, come through and go through under the Missouri River and out the other side. Yes, it's someplace. But the Lakota are saying, we never ceded that land. Our treaty covers this, and it doesn't cover that land, and so it still belongs to us.
Right. Because
it's what is called the reservation clause. Whatever is not specifically talked about in the treaty is reserved to the Indians. So there's a lot of tribes that never gave up their hunting and fishing rights. They never gave up their rights to use. They never gave up their burial grounds. They never gave up land. And so it really creates a very interesting situation now where the United States has to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think and the Biden administration can facilitate that. Now it is subject to what they call the plenary powers of Congress. This was an invention, a legal fiction invented by Justice, what's his name, and back in the 1830s. What was his name? Marshall, he was the first Chief Justice of the United States. It's called the Marshall Trilogy, which defined the relationship between Indians and the United States. And he called Indians sovereign dependent nations. I mean,
Mm.
that's a kind of like a contradiction in terms, but
Yeah.
sovereign dependent. And they also established the government-to-government relationship and the trust. The lands are held in trust by the U.S. government for Indians, so that, which is good, I think, in the end, that you can't sell it. You can't sell reservation land. But anyway, it creates, like the Black Hills were never, in fact, we that was another thing we got done with the CERD. Talked about giving the Black Hills could be returned to the Indians.
Mm.
It's right, the Black Hills are right in the middle of the reservation. Right in the middle.
Right.
What would it take to give it back to the Indians? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Sign here and it's done.
Yeah.
Nobody, the US doesn't lose a thing. And the CERD agreed with us that the Black Hills should be returned to the Lakota. But that's, now I think people are looking at those issues very seriously in the United States. Canadians, it really is what was reserved and what are Indian interests. Like a lot of reservations were created excluding sacred areas, like mountains. There's some mountains in northern Arizona that are very sacred to 9 tribes. 9 tribes. And they wanted to build an observatory. Oh, they got the ski resort got permission to use sewage water to make snow. So I know I went to the council on it, pissed me off. I think I used it in one of the first, what do they call it when that new process of where states get inspected by the council. Anyway,
The UPR.
UPR.
Yeah. Universal Periodic Review.
I did UPR on that one.
Mm.
People laugh, but it's sacrilege.
Mm.
It's, I mean, they're pissing and pooping on a sacred area.
Yeah.
I think we took it as an urgent action matter before the CERD as well, but I think CERD agreed with us, but they're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a sacred mountain in northern New Mexico where they wanted to mine, which is outside of the treaties, but it was not mentioned in the treaties, so it's not ceded. So I think there's some interesting issues that are coming out of that. I think for the most part, the United States is recognizing title where it can. I used to say that there's this one, well, we were in an alliance with some Black people,
Mm-hmm.
the Black Lives, Movement for Black Lives. And they have a thing called Take Back the Land.
Mm.
But what their vision of it is, in places like Detroit, where they have this abandoned houses, you can move in and fix them up and give them to people,
Right, yeah.
And so I said, I got no problem with that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good idea. So there are places where you really can't take back the land, but you certainly can do it in northern New Mexico. You can do it in Utah. You can do it in California and a lot of places. You can do it all throughout the West. There's these places where the treaties that were signed, and also some treaties in the East too, like the Lenape in New York, have land that can be returned to them. And it should be, and it may very well be returned to them by the state of New York. So it's created an interesting dynamic with regard to Indians and Indian treaties.
Mm.
And so then the U.S., their prominence has been enhanced a great deal, and it's part of the, the Declaration says Indigenous people have a right to have their treaties upheld,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time I thought was like Mr. Obvious, but it's in the Declaration.
Yeah.
So Um, so yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think that right now the Indigenous Environmental, they got another project going. I really have no interest in it. I don't want to be a part of it, but I do help in drafting shit,
Okay.
Uh, and it's a process of trying to influence the Biden government, Biden administration, with regard to Indians. And we've got a major project that they're trying to legislate free, prior, and informed consent.
Okay.
And so we had a briefing with some congressional aides because we want legislation. Biden can and hopefully will use his executive authority to allow free, prior, and informed consent in various matters, but legislation would really be a lot better.
Yeah.
And so I was talking. So we had this briefing to some what we meant by free, prior, and informed consent. And I said, well, why shouldn't they ask permission? Can we dig up your burial grounds? Can we destroy your sacred area?
Yeah.
Maybe we should have the right of consent. They agreed, but I thought it was funny. Can ask permission to destroy dig up your ancestors, right? Ask permission. Well, they should. Actually, when the Declaration was finally adopted by the General Assembly in 2007, we honestly believe that was the end, could be the end of colonialism.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Which shows you how much I knew. But if you take a look at it, if you take a look at just the language, people have self-determination.
Treaty language in there. Yeah.
Indigenous peoples are equal in dignity to all other peoples.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. Anyway, but I think it does offer that. It offers that out if the states would respect it.
Yeah.
It does offer that. As a matter of fact, at the time I had an interesting discussion with that Australian lawyer. You may know her, Claire something.
Claire Charters.
Claire Charters, right?
She's from New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
She was really snotty about the Declaration because she said it doesn't provide for independence. But it does.
In what way would you say it?
I think it's Article 44 that talks about the Declaration on what article is that?
I usually have my Declaration with me at my desk, but I cleaned my desk today. Shoot. Holy man. You got a copy of the Declaration? I was about to say, I usually have a copy of the Declaration on my desk, within arm's reach at my fingertips, but now I don't, because I cleaned it.
I know what you mean. I can't find my glasses now. let me. Oh.
That take your time. Yeah. You got one.
Oh, this is in Spanish.
Oh. Yeah, I boosted copies. Not boosted, but they were offering copies in Russian, French, Spanish, and English. So I think at some point I will learn the Declaration, like how Tom Hanks learned English in The Terminal, that in the movie. Do you have a English version now? Hold on.
Okay, it's Article
Oh, sorry.
46.
Oh, but by the way, your camera is a little bit
Okay.
so yeah,
It's
that's right.
Article 46.
Oh, the territorial integrity thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because it's used by states mostly to invoke territorial integrity. However, but like in the climate negotiations, and what they'll probably continue doing in other processes as well, which is
No, actually, this is interesting. I hadn't realized this before, but Article 42 calls for the United Nations and its bodies to promote respect for and full application. That applies to the UNFCCC, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 46.
I pull that up as well. Ah, shoot. Yeah.
Okay, this refers to the exercise of the rights set forth in this declaration shall be subject only to such limitations that are determined by law and in accordance with international human rights obligations. There is part of the bedrock of the United Nations is a declaration on peace and friendship between states or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that as long as self-determination is respected, if self-determination is not respected, then the peoples who are denied it have a right to form their own state.
Oh, well, I know the other part of that resolution, because it's 2625 1970.
Something like that,
yeah. That the territorial integrity, I don't even know how to pronounce it, can only be invoked when the right to self-determination is respected, and that the people individually and as a whole are not discriminated against as into race, creed, or color, something along those lines.
No. This
is that the one you mean?
No. Let me see. Let me try and check this out.
I've been citing that every time I hold on. Resolution 2625 1970. Yeah, so I was 2626 or yeah, boom. Yeah, it was in the friendly. Is it in the friendly relations and cooperation among states?
Yes.
Resolution.
Yes, friendly relations, right?
Yeah.
Friendly relations.
So that one, if we pull that one up. All right. So you say that there's something about sovereignty or independence in there? I didn't know. I'm supposed to know. Right.
Let me get to the part.
Well, let's do a independence. No, that's not it. That's not it either.
No, this isn't good either.
Well, which resolution are you looking at? Is that the friendly
Uh,
relations one?
yeah, I'm looking at Declaration on Principles.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically that. So for people that are listening, that the friendly relations or the principles on, it's the Declaration on Principles of International Law concerning friendly relations and cooperation amongst states in accordance with the Charter of the UN Declaration, UN of the United Nations, or in short, the Declaration on Friendly Relations, um, which, yeah, was in 1970 when it was affirmed. Yeah, well, I was about to ask you as well. Is like how do you do
Well,
your research?
I'll have to do. Oh, I do. It's all web related. It's all web.
Because you know a lot. As in, there's only a few people that I see that have a lot of knowledge in terms of like when you talked about like just a while ago about the what's it the Green Climate Fund and Brazil, that you pulled up documentation and reports and violations and everything else. That is, not everyone does that. It's
Well, I think it comes with territory, really. If you really want to know about something, you have to see what context. You have to, because there's other things around it that are important to the thing itself. So
right.
it's really trying just to keep up with the context of what some things are about. Um, but it's yeah, it does require research, and it does require some becoming educated about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Let me finish reading this.
So,
But you do.
sure.
Well, well, if you take a look at this Declaration on Principles of International Law,
Mm-hmm.
way toward around the pages aren't numbered. Um, Bearing in mind that the subjection of peoples to alien subjugation, domination, and exploitation constitute a violation of the principle, as well as a denial of fundamental human rights, and is contrary to the Charter.
Mm-hmm.
Every state has the duty to promote through joint and separate action universal respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms, the establishment of a sovereign independent state, the free association or integration, or this it's really talking about the alternatives to colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
Any state has the duty to refrain from any forcible action which deprives people referred to above in the elaboration of the present principles of the right to self-determination and freedom and independence. In their actions against and resistance to such forcible action in pursuit of the exercise of the right of self-determination, such peoples are entitled to seek and receive support in accordance with the purpose of the Charter, purposes and principles of the Charter.
Mm. Yeah.
So peoples do have a right to their independence,
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
particularly if they're denied, their human rights. So uh, I disagreed with Claire at the time, uh, and I think she agrees with me now that you can actually justify independence, but in order to achieve it, it's a political act. That is a political act. It's not based on human rights principles or declarations. That was the argument I used when we were lobbying for the adoption by the General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to several delegations, including this guy. He's one of the old guys from Algeria. The Africans are afraid of us.
Mm.
And this guy from Algeria, he'd been president of everything, in terms of international relations, he was the man.
Right.
And so we were talking to him and his delegation, the Algerian delegation, and he says, well, I understand that you want independence. And I said, I'm aware of the struggle of the Algerian peoples for their freedom from
Mm-hmm.
colonialism. I said, we're in a different state. We're in a different position.
Mm.
I said, in fact, I said, you can't achieve independence through a human rights document. It's a political act.
Definitely.
It's not a to achieve independence as you did not rely on human rights instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not there. And he was surprised that I knew anything about the Algerian Revolution. But in fact, they were the first terrorists. They were the first bombers. What is it called? The bombs, the human bombs. People strapped in bombs.
And the suicide terrorists. Those.
So they invented them.
Mm.
It was a very hard struggle for the Algerians to achieve independence from France. But he understood that we're not going to get independence from the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. If people want independence, they're going to have to go into political struggle, not human rights struggle. But if you want to justify it, then you can say, well,
Right.
you're not respecting our right of self-determination.
Mm.
Therefore, we have a right to try to achieve it in other ways.
You see that happening, like indigenous peoples, in terms of not desire, but in terms of possibility, indigenous people seeking independence?
Not as a practical matter, no.
Mm-hmm.
Greenland, the Inuit in Greenland, at first, this is so screwed up. When their ice started to melt, and they saw that the melting ice was uncovering these fields of precious minerals, and they thought, oh, we could get into mining and cut out Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
And so Denmark is a very democratic state. And I think Denmark would have given them independence had they finally asked for it. But then I think the people in Greenland realized that it was a hassle to be independent. I mean, you had defense to worry about, foreign relations, all these other costs. Their people would not be receiving stipends from Denmark anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd have to pay for their army and protection, and they'd be at the mercy of mining companies. So I think Hallmark, what's his name? That guy, I forget his name. The Inuit decided against it.
Okay.
So they don't, but that's about as close as I think you can come when the state would say, okay, well, we hate to see you go, but if that's what you really want, well,
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
The other one, well, I think the Kunas are pretty much are almost an independent state.
Mm.
They determine who can come on their land, who can't. They got their own borders. The only thing they're not responsible for is an army and defense.
Mm-hmm.
But they do act in defense of their territory. They can muster people to go keep settlers from coming onto their land, or keep narco traffickers from using their land as a dropping off place.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I think they like what they're doing. I mean, they can maintain themselves. pretty much independently of Panama. In fact, they have uh, food security, which is really, I think, food sovereignty is paramount in any country that does not have the ability to feed its people. He's in deep shit, deep shit. They're going to be dependent on people who will be able to manipulate them no end.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kunas have that ability. In fact, they eat well, Kunaya,
Yeah.
really well. Um, and maybe the autonomous region of Nicaragua, the Mosquito, they have their own government. Only Mosquitos can vote in the elections. Um, but also, I think they're in the same position where they are better off economically being part of Nicaragua.
Right.
Other than that, I don't know. Obviously, there are places like Fiji who are already, but they also have the struggles between the colonizer Hindus and the
Yeah.
native Fiji. But they seem to be in control of their government. Samoans probably are in control of their government to the degree that I mean, where does that get you? You know, you're losing land and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
They also have no food security anymore. The fresh water is being polluted. They're losing fertile land. They're losing whole islands at a time. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know. Maybe in Maluku one day, and I think that's what Indonesia's afraid of, really.
We're working on it.
But I'm sure that they're promoting, like they did in East Timor, the immigration of non-indigenous peoples into
Yeah,
the island.
transmigration is a big thing, as in
Mhm.
trying to, because Java, which is the biggest, the most dense populated island in Indonesia. So they're what they're doing is, yeah, still like before, when you drafted the communication to the special rapporteur and the working group on arbitrary detention, that's still happening. The transmigration, like it's still these bringing people to our islands now. And by now, because it's already 20 years now, so you have actually people born on the islands actually that are non-indigenous, and they're now part of the community right now. They're part of
Yeah.
the civil society at this point. So it's so they're playing a long game, obviously.
Yeah. Well, if you
As
take a look at the Convention on Genocide, it's that's what they're doing.
yeah,
They're
but
destroying the culture.
definitely in more ways than one. And my fear is that at some point that Indonesia will yeah, feel satisfied that they have the numbers, that the ducks in a row,
Yeah.
and that they'll allow a plebiscite or a referendum or something like that, like act democratically, and then yeah, we're screwed if that's going to happen.
That's what happened to Hawaii and Alaska. You know, there's what they call a blue sea kind of thing to colonialism.
Mm,
And if your land is separated by the ocean, then they can't be part of your land. They can't be part of the country.
right.
But the United States, right after in World War II, Alaska was a big jumping off place for the Japanese war.
Mm,
And so they had a lot of military personnel, air bases, army, just a lot.
yeah.
And in Hawaii, the same thing. They had a lot of servicemen, a lot of Navy people. And so they had, once they had the numbers, they declared a plebiscite. And contrary to the rules, all the military people were eligible to vote.
See, yeah.
And so they voted for becoming a state. And the only thing on the agenda on the vote ballot was, shall Hawaii become a state? Shall Alaska become a state? Yes or no?
Right.
That,
Yeah.
that was the only option.
Mm,
And so a lot of, I mean, there's been a lot of settlement by a lot of the army people had stayed around. This was in the 50s. A lot of the service people had stayed around, and that's how they became states of the union. But they shouldn't be, because of these really exceptions to the rules, international rules that I forget what it's called, but it was a doctrine that said if you were separated, it's like the French wanted to declare Mauritania or one of the colonies French as part of the French, but they couldn't because they were a bit more honest about it. So I think they had a plebiscite for the New Caledonia. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I remember once I was in Geneva and I was talking to this guy and he said, they were telling us about the New Caledonians received French textbooks for their schools. And their textbook would teach children that their ancestors were the Gauls.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Oh,
And I said, what? Listen, I've got the 2-minute intervention. You can have it if you promise to bring this up.
yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to bring it up in my intervention.
Mm.
I forget. It was probably UPR or something. It was before the council. Oh, it was Indigenous Peoples. They have the council has in September, they have an Indigenous thing.
Panel. Yeah. Yeah. Half day discussion. Yeah.
They have discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed to get an intervention. I couldn't believe it. I laughed. Your ancestors are the Gauls.
Wow. That's in their textbooks. It's insane.
Well, I doubt if it's still in their textbooks, but
Oh, I hope not. Well,
Rick should find out. Maybe ask
Yeah.
somebody from New Caledonia. But I don't think so. I think they finally got I brought this up during the declaration discussions.
right.
The French didn't like me at all. They said there was no discrimination in France, but it was against the law for Muslim women to wear the veil,
The hijab.
hijab.
Yeah.
And they said, no, it's not discrimination because the law applies to everybody.
Oh, come on.
That's what they said.
That's what they said. Oh man, yeah.
You mean I'm prohibited from wearing a hijab myself? I said, yes, you and all the other Catholics.
Yeah.
There's no discrimination because it applies to everybody.
Sometimes you hear the most ridiculous things. No, sorry, I shouldn't say ridiculous. But like the most.
You can't say ridiculous.
No, I can't say that. But like sometimes you hear things that like, did he or she just say that? That's within the corridors. But I'm not gonna mention them, obviously. But yeah, it's such a yeah, you've seen a lot, and that's I'm super glad that you actually wanted to get into a conversation. And I'm always I wonder like what is like what is the one thing in history that if you could witness one thing in history, what would it be?
Oh, probably that there'd be no climate change.
Right.
That if they had really listened to the science in 1992, when the Framework Convention was first adopted, or the Kyoto Protocol in 1997, when they implemented it in 1997, if they had taken the steps then, we wouldn't be necessary steps in terms of not only the polluting states reducing to 1990 levels and whatever standards, and promoted adaptation and no emissions from the developing countries. Because China was virtually, at the time, they were agrarian society, we wouldn't be looking at the destruction of the human race as much as we are right now.
Yeah.
And I guess the second would be that I think the United States is responsible a great deal for racism throughout the world. And I think that if the United States had done what it should have done after the Civil War, Reconstruction without Jim Crow laws, the world would be quite different, I think.
Hmm.
But I think climate change would be my major concern. How
And
about you?
witness something in history that happened
Or that you would like to see
or
happen?
would like to see. Definitely the independence of Maluku. That's what I would like to see. And if I can contribute to it in any way, shape, or form, through doing what I do, but only history can be the judge of that. That is something that I would like to see. And with this one thing in history, it would be my mom for the very first time going to the UN when she was 17. That's what I
Was,
would.
was she that young when I knew her?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not many people know that.
No.
No. Everyone thinks that she was only recently went to the UN, but she got into the UN when she was 17.
So
She actually ran the GA. She went to the GA. She ran an embassy when she was 21. We were recognized. Really? We were recognized as an independent nation by the African state of Benin in 1976.
Wow.
Until 86, 85, 86. I was born in 86. And she ran for the better part of that time the embassy. Next to, well, she was the right hand man to a woman, to the political leader back then. So if ever there's I would love to see is a photo or video or a audio recording of her doing her first speech or walking to the UN, how she felt, what she did.
This was in New York?
That was in New York, yeah. There was she was in the only seat that for a very long time, because she sat around with Ramos Horta, was it from East Timor, because they were also fighting for their independence back then.
Yeah.
So they sat at the balcony of the GA room the whole time, trying to lobby states. They had an office in New York on Fifth Avenue.
You could be an American citizen instead of a Dutch.
I could have been. Well, I don't know. Like, don't know what happened, or a Benin citizen for that matter, because she was. They closed off the embassy in 1984, 85. I was born in 86. So I could have been I could have been a Benin citizen as well. So that is something I would have loved to witness in history as well. And also that it's also if it, so this whole thing, this conversation is also like born out of that, as in documenting conversations with people and documenting what I do at the UN, so that my great grandchildren hopefully one day can see this and hopefully learn learn lessons or get nuggets of information or something like that. So that is Can I ask you because we're coming up to the 3-hour mark and I don't want to keep you too long. One final question, and you and obviously if there's anything else that you want to share, by all means. But related to this is imagine Alberto Saldamando, the 10-year-old kid, if you could go back in time and tell your 10-year-old self anything, what do you think it would be?
Well, that's hard, but I remember what I was like. I would just encourage me to study. I was such a bad student. I was a terrible student. I was always thinking of something else, dreaming, kind of in a daze, I think. You know, I was pretty much introverted.
What were you dreaming about?
No, I just, just daydream and look out the window. Not really, not really very productive. I was not very productive.
But still, you became you went to a lawyer, so and that you can say that one went well.
If it would, I went to law school because of the draft. I didn't want to go in the army, and I got an exemption to go to law school.
Right.
And I still had 2 years left after that, but I managed to avoid the draft.
What is in the profession under what that you other than what you're doing right now that you were thinking about or attempting to do?
In law school?
No, but because you went to law school because of the draft. Did you have anything else in your mind, or what like that you wanted to do?
I had to do something.
Okay.
So that I knew how to pass tests. That was my skill.
Right.
My skill was passing a test.
Right.
So I thought, well, I can use it. It was too late for me to get into graduate school, which could have been an option. But my father was grew up with a guy who was counsel to the Board of Regents. So I called him up and I said, I'd really like to get into law school, but I haven't taken the law school entrance exams yet. He said, don't worry about it. Just show up. So that's what happened.
Really? How was your law school days? How were they?
That's when I began to realize the depth of racism in the United States. It was very racist time. There's really, even people who thought they were your friends would say some really off the wall things. Also, the faculty there was one guy in particular was very racist toward Mexicans, actually. He really kept me from going. He thought he tried to flunk me out, but all he did was kept me off a law review. I didn't find that out until my senior year, my third year.
Yeah.
But that was really my experience. But I managed to do well enough to stay in and graduate. And then I took the bar and passed the bar exam both in Arizona and then California. So no, I do know how to take a test. Right?
That's so cool that you can that you can by default that you're good at passing tests. I suck at tests. I really suck at them. I can talk for hours. I can explain everything, no problem. But once you put a test in front of me, I don't know. Especially when there's time factor as well, which is more killing than a test itself, because you try to distribute like the amount of time that you spend on a question, and then you try to, I don't know. I don't ever want to talk about it because, which then I'll get like Vietnam flashbacks to my law school days. Yeah.
Well, I put the citation for that piece of
Yeah, I saw.
thing in the
I
chat.
saw it. Yeah,
So in case you want to check it out.
I will.
No, I think tests are. I think people tend to overthink tests. The human mind is, the brain is an amazing thing. It stores all kinds of knowledge you don't even know you have.
Mm.
So when you take a test, you just relax and let it happen, and not worry about the time or what. So for the most part, that served me well.
Hmm. Yeah, I started to worry already. Like when I got the test in front of me, then I calculate, all right, how many questions and how many time do I have, and I'm like, I try to, yeah.
Not good, not good. It's good to read the exam over before you start at the beginning, but you start doing those kinds of things, you're really messing yourself up.
Yeah,
Sometimes you do get to reach a point and say, I'm spending too much time on this, I better go to the next time. But it's been a long time since I took a test, and actually you're quite good. You're good on your feet, I think. And that's really, you could have used that in taking exams because you are good on your feet. You know how, and you know what to say and what not to say. And sometimes it's more important to know what not to say.
true. And then learned that the hard way as well. It's all trial and error, but
Yeah.
definitely.
No, I still say the wrong thing sometimes, but I think people forgive sometimes. But no, I tend to be very. I don't know how people see me. Um, I have a feeling. Well, I don't know. It's tough to know how the others perceive me, but I think well enough, I guess.
Yeah,
Because I do say some off the wall things sometimes. It's my sense of humor, actually. It's my sardonic sense of humor. People
right.
sometimes think I'm serious.
Is there anything that you can get you really mad or upset?
Yeah. Not frequently, but there's been a couple of times when I really lose it. I lose it. I become irrational out of anger. But those are long stories. Yeah, 2 or 3 times I just lost it completely and
Yeah,
couldn't help myself.
right.
But that 2 or 3 times.
I think people see you as a wise guy, in a positive sense, not in a cynical sense, but as a wise person, with a lot of miles on his shoes, that has seen it all, and yeah, and in addition, I see you as one of, um, like when it comes to communications, in terms of communication to the complaint mechanisms and everything else, like, I think everyone should be looking at you in terms of like how to do research, how to write them, how to, I don't know. Have you ever thought about, I don't know, doing trainings or something along those lines? Because I don't know a lot of people that do better than you do. I
No,
do know a lot of people.
I've done some stuff on human rights and climate change. I've got a little PowerPoint, things like that. But no, I have to do it full time, or I do it when called upon. Uh, I used to do it a lot. After the declaration was adopted, Joseph used to take me to Geneva and do trainings before I guess it was before the MRIP.
Mm.
People would show up and it was some, no, or maybe it was a September session of the council. But, and I think I overdid the information. There's too much information. And I think that you have to really pick what you want to say and just be clear. And then if people are interested, then I'll give them some stuff to follow up on. But I think it's just, I think you have to be, you have to be thoughtful, I think, and not overload, not overload with too much information. I mean, some of my slides were ridiculous. Just full of stuff, you know. Yeah.
But
no,
you're better at talking anyway. You're better at just the way I see it. That like slides are helpful, but like you sitting one on one or with the group, just talking. I think that is your. I think
I've
that
been doing,
divisions.
I've been writing positions for the caucus for a while.
Mm.
You know, like the opening statement you have like the day before the opening, and
Yeah.
so I'll see what the sense of the group is, and I'll write 3 or 4 paragraphs and bring them back to the group, and it's worked out. It's worked out. I was thinking, well, I don't know, but you know, the intersession was going to start in a week or two, and we're going to get 3 minutes to as an opening for IPOs.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of drafting something for the groups for our meeting in terms of the indigenous peoples. But you have to wait and see what people want to talk about. What if they want to tell what do they want to tell the stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be related, you know, what do we want to tell them? So I'm going to wait and see what people want to, we're going to have a meeting, I guess.
We're trying to, yeah, I saw an email coming by that they're trying to have a caucus before that.
Yeah.
Are you going to Glasgow? Are you planning on?
Yeah, I'm
Glasgow?
planning to.
Good. Yeah. What is, yeah, maybe that's like the real question actually, that's the most important one. Because you've been talking about about the effects of climate change and everything else, the burden and everything else, and which is very relevant and very how should I say it? Yeah, very relevant. Why do you do what you do? Why do you keep what is the juice that makes you keep going, keep coming back to Marrakesh, Bonn, Katowice, Madrid, Glasgow?
Oh, and climate change, it's like I say, it's interesting. But you know, it's difficult. Like you know, you actually believe you can influence those people. I'm not sure that's true, but you know, you give it a shot.
Mm.
But I enjoy the people. I enjoy the work. I like to travel. Actually, a lot of it is just going to a different place and doing different things, meeting different people. And there's a lot of good people. But I don't really know. Like I say, you know, I've been thinking about not doing it anymore. Uh, but the question is always, well, what would you do if you didn't do this? You know,
Travel, maybe.
well, yeah, I got a lot of frequent flyers I could use.
I can imagine you have accumulated a lot of them. What was your favorite place to travel to or been to?
Well, you know, Marrakesh was good.
Marrakesh, yeah.
That was really the markets and that was also Doha was interesting as well. I have a nephew that was living in Dubai at the time, so I went to visit him, and they
Oh,
showed me
nice.
around. That was interesting. Paris is a beautiful city, really. Paris was a very good place. And New York City's got a lot of energy. A
Yeah,
lot of energy in New York City.
true.
And you walk out, and it just takes you up. You know, it just carries you away.
What's on the bucket list? If there's
Oh, I don't
any,
know. I don't. We don't. I don't have.
you don't have them,
No. No.
right?
No, not really. I've been thinking, and actually, it's interesting that I can't think of anything right now, but I've come across things. Oh, that would be fun to do. That kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But no, I can't think of anything. I just, you know.
Yeah.
And for you, what's on your bucket list?
Travel. Well, I like to spend at least a day in all the places that I've been to. Usually, like for example, I've been to numerous times to Dubai, but only in terms of transit from Europe to Australia or New Zealand or Fiji, and the only place that I've seen in Dubai was the airport, and I would love to see Dubai. But in terms of, I'd love to go through, go to the communities, indigenous communities in Kamchatka, Russia, and Siberia. I just love to experience life. I know it's not really in line with my temperature, my preferred temperature, but like I'd love to do that. Like you, I like to travel, meet new people, to it's trying to learn new languages. And I'm still learning Spanish. I know 12 languages. Spanish is not one of them. So I'm still telling myself, all right, learn Spanish, and
You speak
still
French? You
I
speak
do speak
French?
French. Yeah,
That should be easy. English and Spanish and French.
that's what everyone says. Everyone says it. Yeah, it should be easy, like Spanish,
Yeah.
and French, but still,
Yeah, I know. I
yeah.
know. I've been trying to learn French for I don't know. Well, I gave up giving. I gave up learning French. I used to do this course on. Actually, it was in preparation for Paris. I
Mm.
signed on to this course on French, but I didn't really understand it. It was supposed to be conversational French, but I would study the writing and and how to spell
Oh,
spelling in French is terrible.
that's terrible. That's if yeah, in terms of the Roman phonetic and everything else, French is next in line to German. Writing in German is terrible, but French is yeah, better to focus on conversational.
Well, I
Duolingo
made
is a good app.
mine was Fluent U, something like that. I would pay a monthly fee and I could get on whenever I wanted and watch these videos.
Hmm.
But I didn't get the idea. I should have just listened to it and repeated what I heard and
Yeah,
forget about the writing. But they had a writing thing that I could have just ignored, but I went through the writing stuff. So I would have probably learned a lot more French had I just focused on speaking.
yeah. That's speaking of French is I mix up words a lot of times in terms of the sequence, and people still get it, or they're just
Super nice.
super nice super nice to me, like, oh yeah, yeah, sure, I think we get what you're trying to say, but yeah, it's conversational French is I like conversational French, especially when I'm in Geneva, and to talk to people, I
The guard.
to the guards, and then and the people at the Serpentine Lounge, and the um and at the and
I
when you
haven't.
go, yeah,
No, I just haven't been there in a long time.
I prefer Geneva over New York any day, because it's so, yeah, I like the vibe in the city. New York is fine because it's there's a lot of it's there's always something happening, but Geneva, like, it has a special place in my heart, I would say, is that that there's a nice relaxed vibe in that city, especially in the summer. Not only that, yeah, the parades and the fireworks and everything else, which is mostly for the tourists, 100%, but like it's the rich tourists to Geneva. But yeah, it's
I thought it was boring. There's
And
nothing to do. I mean, you go to they have one art museum. It's a decent art museum. It's got a very nice Picasso, but that was it.
there's an art museum. Never been to the. I've never been to a museum in Geneva.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
There
really?
is. It's good. There's also a couple of Indian places, like Indigenous Peoples, kind of like a museum and a shop downtown. But no, I spent too much time there. I mean, just the whole process of the negotiation on the draft was 2 or 3 times a year for 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes once it was 3 weeks, and that went on for several years. So
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time, a lot of weekends with nothing to do. Well, we would caucus first, obviously, but then what do you do on Sunday?
You didn't go to Chamonix or
Yeah,
Lausanne
that's
or
true.
yeah,
People would rent a car and go up to the Alps.
yeah, yeah. That's what it. Those are the days. Yeah, not worry the days, but like that. That's always nice to do. For the first time last year I went to not last year, the year before that, I went outside of Geneva. Never left Geneva whenever I went to the UN, and I went to with Binota and Thomas. I went to Montreux, took a train, went to Montreux. Was supposed to walk around the place, but all of a sudden Thomas, he saw a boat, so we got off the train, straight went onto the boat, and then went to somewhere. So I never got to see Montreux. I think that's the story of my life. I go to a place, never get to see it, other than just to transit. And I just would like, for once, I would like to, in the future, I would like to make it more of an experience, I think. So yeah.
No, Montreux has a really great jazz festival.
I know, never been to it.
And yeah, I was there a couple of times when it was going on, and I was just too lazy to go. But I could have gone for the day, and listened to some jazz. It's a really good jazz festival. It's a premier jazz festival. Really.
Supposed to be one of the best in the world, the Montreux Jazz Festival, and
that in Monterey. Monterey's got a good one.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And then Newport. I don't know if the one in Newport's still going on, but I like music. I like that. Well, I think it's like,
yeah.
I think I better get back to my email, man.
No, appreciate your free time, Alberto. And
no, it was fun.
It was fun. Yeah. Well, and like you said, you're afraid you were not able to touch the 3 hour mark, but we
1 hour usually do on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Movies on Netflix. Yeah.
Movies on Netflix, and then again, it's now always a pleasure to talk to you, Alberto, and hopefully we'll get to enjoy your wisdom for many more years. However, if you decide to
die,
oh come on, like, if you decide to take it easy and enjoy life, we would understand that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you later on this week, maybe tomorrow. I forget. It's gonna have a
there's FWG meeting tomorrow. And then there's a caucus somewhere, but I'll definitely see you.